The widow knocked on my door at 7 a.m., still wearing her funeral dress from yesterday. What she asked me changed everything. If you've ever wondered whether love can bloom from the ashes of tragedy, stay with me until the very end of this story. Hit that like button and comment which city you're watching from so I can see how far this journey reaches. What started as a simple act of kindness became something neither of us expected, something that would challenge everything I thought I knew about grief, love, and second chances. The alarm didn't wake Marcus Cole that Tuesday morning. He was already awake, staring at the ceiling fan making its endless circles in the pre-dawn darkness. Sleep had become a luxury he couldn't quite afford, not with the weight of single parenthood pressing down on his chest every night. The numbers on his phone glowed 5:47 a.m., and he knew from experience that lying there would only let his mind wander to places he couldn't afford to visit. He swung his legs out of bed, his feet finding the worn carpet, and padded quietly down the hallway of his modest two-bedroom apartment. The walls were decorated with Lily's artwork, crayon drawings of stick figure families, handprint turkeys from Thanksgivings past, and a recent watercolor of a sunset that his 8-year-old daughter had been particularly proud of. Each piece was a reminder of what he was fighting for, what made the sleepless nights worth it. The kitchen was small, barely enough room for one person to move comfortably, but Marcus had learned to navigate it in the dark. He pulled out the pancake mix, eggs, and milk with the efficiency of a man who'd performed this ritual 1,000 times. The measuring cup clinked softly against the mixing bowl, and he poured with practiced precision, whisking the batter until it was smooth and free of lumps. The first pancake always went to testing the temperature, a sacrifice to the breakfast gods, his late wife Emma would have joked. The memory came unbidden, as they often did in these quiet moments. Emma laughing in this very kitchen, flour somehow ending up in her hair, on her nose, everywhere except the mixing bowl. Emma singing off-key while flipping pancakes, dancing with baby Lily in her arms. Marcus shook his head, banishing the ghosts. 3 years had passed since the accident, and while the sharp edges of grief had dulled to a manageable ache, mornings like this could still catch him off guard. He focused on the present, on the golden brown pancake forming on the griddle, on the coffee percolating in the old machine Emma had insisted on keeping, even when single-serve pods became all the rage. "Dad?" Lily's sleepy voice called from her bedroom. "Morning, sweetheart, pancakes in 10 minutes. Mickey Mouse shape?" Marcus smiled despite himself. "When have I ever made them any other way?" He heard the soft padding of her feet, the creak of her bedroom door, and knew she was heading to the bathroom for her morning routine. They had it down to a science now, him cooking, her getting partially ready, breakfast together, then teeth brushing, backpack checking, and the walk to the school bus stop at the corner of Maple and 3rd. The clock read 6:43 when Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway, her dark curls a tangled mess, wearing mismatched pajamas, dinosaurs on top, unicorns on bottom. She climbed onto her usual chair, yawning widely. "Bad dreams?" Marcus asked, sliding a Mickey-shaped pancake onto her plate. "No dreams at all," Lily said, which somehow seemed sadder. She drowned the pancake in syrup with the enthusiasm only an 8-year-old could muster. "Is today library day?" "Thursday is library day. Today's Tuesday." "Oh." She took a bite, chewing thoughtfully. "Sarah's mom is bringing cupcakes for her birthday." "That's nice." Marcus poured himself coffee, black, no sugar. He'd given up the cream and sugar somewhere in the fog of early single parenthood, and now the bitter taste felt like home. "Dad?" "Do you think Mrs. Bennett is okay?" Marcus paused mid-sip. Their neighbor, Sophie Bennett, lived in the apartment directly across the hall. The walls in the building were thin enough that they could sometimes hear her moving around, the muffled sounds of her daily life bleeding through the shared wall. But yesterday had been different. Yesterday, the sounds had been silence. Marcus had attended the funeral Monday afternoon, leaving Lily with his sister Rachel for a few hours. He'd stood in the back of the funeral home, watching Sophie stand rigid beside her husband's casket, greeting mourners with a practiced smile that never reached her eyes. David Bennett had been only 34, an accountant with a quick laugh and a tendency to hold the building's door open for everyone, no matter how many grocery bags he was carrying himself. A heart defect no one knew about until it was too late. "I think Mrs. Bennett is very sad right now," Marcus said carefully. "When someone we love dies, it takes a long time to feel okay again." Lily nodded solemnly, too wise for her years. She'd learned about death early, watching her own mother slip away in a hospital bed, machines beeping their futile rhythms. Should we make her cookies? The simple kindness of children never ceased to amaze him. That's a sweet thought, baby. Maybe this weekend. They finished breakfast in comfortable silence, and Marcus moved through the morning checklist with autopilot precision. Lily's lunch, peanut butter and jelly, apple slices, a juice box, and the chocolate chip granola bar she'd requested. Her backpack, homework signed and tucked into the folder, permission slip for next week's field trip, library book she'd finished reading. At 6:58, Marcus was tying Lily's shoes, her foot propped on his knee, when the knock came. It wasn't a normal knock. It was urgent, desperate, the kind of knock that made Marcus's protective instincts flare immediately. He glanced at Lily, who looked up with wide, curious eyes. "Stay here," he said, straightening. He crossed the small living room in 4 strides and pulled open the door. Sophie Bennett stood in the hallway, and Marcus felt his breath catch. She was still wearing the black dress from yesterday's funeral, the same dress he'd seen her in as she'd stood beside her husband's casket. Her blonde hair, usually neat and styled, hung limp around her face. Her eyes were swollen, red-rimmed, hollow in a way that made Marcus's chest tighten with recognition. "Sophie," he said softly. "I can't." Her voice cracked. She wrapped her arms around herself, shaking. "I can't be in there. I can't be alone in there." Marcus didn't think. Thinking would have meant hesitating, wondering if it was appropriate, if he was overstepping. Instead, he simply stepped aside, pulling the door wider. "Come in." Sophie walked past him on unsteady legs, and Marcus caught the scent of stale coffee and the faint perfume she must have put on yesterday morning, before the world had demanded she say goodbye to her husband in front of a room full of well-meaning strangers. Lily watched from the kitchen table, her small face serious. She'd inherited Emma's ability to read a room, to understand when something important was happening, even if she couldn't articulate what it was. Marcus guided Sophie to the worn couch, the same couch he'd bought with Emma when they'd first moved in together, the same couch where he'd held Lily through countless nightmares, where he'd fallen asleep too many nights watching cartoons he was too tired to turn off. He grabbed the throw blanket from the back, the soft blue one Lily used when she was feeling sick, and draped it over Sophie's trembling shoulders. She sank into the cushions, her body seeming to collapse in on itself. "Coffee?" Marcus asked. "Tea?" Sophie shook her head, then nodded, then made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. "I don't know. I don't know anything right now." "Coffee it is." Marcus moved back to the kitchen, acutely aware of Lily's questioning gaze. He poured a fresh mug, added cream and sugar. He'd seen Sophie make coffee in the building's shared laundry room enough times to know how she took it, and carried it back to the living room. Sophie accepted the mug with shaking hands, wrapping her fingers around the ceramic as if the warmth could somehow ground her to reality. "Thank you," she whispered. Marcus settled into the armchair across from her, close enough to be present but far enough to give her space. Lily appeared beside him, her small hand finding his. "Mrs. Bennett looks sad," she said, with that brutal honesty children possessed. "Yes, baby, she is." "Like when Mommy died?" Marcus felt the familiar ache in his chest, but Sophie's head lifted, her eyes finding Lily's. For a moment, something passed between them, a recognition, perhaps, of shared experience. Sophie had known Emma, had brought over casseroles in those first terrible weeks, had offered to watch Lily when Marcus couldn't get out of bed. "Yes," Sophie said, her voice raw. "Like that." Lily seemed to consider this, then walked over to the couch. She climbed up beside Sophie, careful not to spill the coffee, and leaned her small body against the grieving woman's side. "It's okay to be sad," Lily said, repeating words Marcus had told her countless times. "Dad says the sadness doesn't go away, but it gets easier to carry." Sophie's face crumpled, and she set the coffee mug on the side table with trembling hands before wrapping her arms around Lily. She cried then, not the restrained, socially acceptable tears of the funeral, but deep, wrenching sobs that shook her entire body. Marcus moved to intervene, to protect his daughter from this intensity of emotion, but Lily caught his eye and gave a small shake of her head. She was 8 years old and somehow understood that sometimes people needed to break apart before they could begin to heal. So Marcus stayed in his chair, watching this tableau, his daughter holding a woman twice her age, offering the kind of uncomplicated comfort only a child could give. He glanced at the clock. 7:12. They needed to leave for the bus in 18 minutes, but some things were more important than punctuality. Time moved strangely in that apartment. Sophie's sobs eventually quieted to hiccups, then to shaky breaths. Lily didn't move, patient in a way that seemed impossible for a third grader. Marcus sat in his chair, a silent sentinel, letting the moment unfold as it needed to. When Sophie finally pulled back, her face was blotchy and wet. She looked at Lily with something like wonder. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have—" "It's okay," Lily interrupted. "Dad says we have to let the feelings out, or they get stuck inside and make us sick." Sophie laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to surprise even her. "Your dad is very wise." "He makes really good pancakes, too," Lily said seriously. "Do you want one? They're Mickey Mouse shaped." Marcus checked the clock again. 7:19. They were going to be late, but he found he didn't care. "I think Mrs. Bennet might appreciate that, Lil. Why don't you grab the one I kept warm in the oven?" Lily scrambled off the couch with purpose, and Sophie watched her go before turning to Marcus. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to intrude on your morning. I woke up and everything was so quiet, and the apartment still smells like him, and I couldn't breathe, and I didn't know where else to go." "You didn't intrude," Marcus said firmly. "You're always welcome here, Sophie. Any time." "I knocked on your door at 7 in the morning wearing yesterday's funeral dress. And I let you in. Some things are more important than social conventions." Lily returned, carefully carrying a plate with a slightly misshapen Mickey Mouse pancake. Sophie accepted it with a watery smile, and Lily beamed with pride. "Dad, we're going to be late for the bus," Lily announced, with the sudden practicality of someone who'd remembered the real world existed. Marcus glanced at Sophie. "Will you be okay if I walk her to the stop? It's just on the corner, 5 minutes there and back." Sophie nodded, taking a small bite of the pancake. "Go. I'll be fine. I'll just—" She looked around the apartment as if seeing it for the first time. "I'll be fine." Marcus hesitated, but Lily was already putting on her backpack, and the clock was now reading 7:24. The bus came at 7:35, and being late meant driving Lily to school, which meant being late for his own work meeting at 9. "I'll be right back," he promised. The morning air was crisp, autumn asserting itself after a long summer. Lily slipped her hand into Marcus's as they walked, her backpack bouncing against her small frame. "Is Mrs. Bennet going to be okay?" she asked. "Eventually," Marcus said. "It takes time." "Like it took you time." Marcus squeezed her hand. "Yeah, baby. Like that." "But you're okay now, right?" Was he okay? Marcus thought about the sleepless nights, the moments of crushing loneliness, the weight of single parenthood that sometimes felt unbearable. But he also thought about mornings like this, Lily's hand in his, pancakes shaped like cartoon characters, the simple rhythm of life they'd built together. "I'm getting there," he said honestly. They reached the bus stop where 3 other children and 2 mothers were already waiting. Marcus recognized them, the Kim twins and Mrs. Rodriguez's daughter, but kept his greeting brief. The mothers, Janet Kim and Maria Rodriguez, gave him sympathetic looks that Marcus had learned to interpret. The single dad, they seemed to say, how brave, how tragic, how does he manage? The yellow school bus rumbled around the corner at exactly 7:33, and Marcus bent down to kiss the top of Lily's head. "Have a good day, sweetheart. I love you." "Love you too, Dad." She paused at the bus steps, turning back. "Tell Mrs. Bennet it gets easier to carry." Then she was gone, climbing aboard with the other children, finding a seat by a window and waving as the bus pulled away. Marcus waved back, waiting until the bus disappeared around the corner before turning to walk home. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a reminder about his 9 a.m. video conference with the development team. He worked as a software engineer for a tech company that had been understanding about his need for flexible hours, but that understanding had its limits. When he opened the apartment door, he found Sophie standing at the window, the blanket still wrapped around her shoulders, looking out at the street below. The pancake plate sat on the coffee table, empty. "Thank you," she said without turning around. "For the pancake, for letting me fall apart in your living room, for not asking me if I'm okay when we both know I'm not." Marcus closed the door quietly behind him. "Do you want to talk about it?" "No." Sophie's voice was firm, then softer. "Maybe. I don't know. Everyone at the funeral kept telling me how sorry they were, how strong I was being, how David would have been proud. But he's not here to be proud, is he? He's just gone. Marcus moved to stand beside her at the window, maintaining a respectful distance. People don't know what to say. They mean well. I know they do. But I'm so tired of meaning well. I'm tired of people treating me like I'm made of glass, like I might shatter if they say the wrong thing. She finally turned to look at him, her eyes fierce despite the tears. You didn't do that. You just let me be a mess. Being a mess is understandable, Marcus said. You buried your husband yesterday. The words hung in the air, stark and true. Sophie flinched but didn't look away. I keep thinking I'll wake up and this will have been some horrible nightmare, she whispered. That I'll roll over and he'll be there, snoring like he always did, hogging the blankets. But then I wake up and the bed is empty, and it's so quiet, Marcus. The silence is deafening. Marcus knew that silence. He'd lived in it for months after Emma died, when Lily would finally fall asleep and he'd be left alone with his thoughts and the absence that filled every room. It gets less quiet, he said. Not because the silence goes away, but because you learn to fill it with other sounds, new routines, different rhythms. How long did it take you, Sophie asked, to feel like yourself again? Marcus considered lying, offering false comfort. But Sophie deserved honesty. I'm not sure I ever felt like myself again. I think I became a different version of myself. The before Emma died Marcus and the after Emma died Marcus are different people. Does the after version like himself? Most days. Marcus managed a small smile. Some days are harder than others, but I have Lily, and she gives me a reason to keep showing up. Sophie nodded slowly, absorbing this. David and I were going to start trying for a baby this year. We've been married for 6 years, and we kept saying, next year, and then she trailed off, her hands tightening on the blanket. Now there is no next year. There's just me, alone in an apartment that was supposed to be temporary, in a life that was supposed to be the beginning of something bigger. You're allowed to grieve that too, Marcus said gently. Not just the person you lost, but the future you thought you'd have. Did you? Grieve the future? Every day, Marcus admitted. Emma and I had plans. We were going to have 2 more kids. We were going to buy a house with a backyard. We were going to grow old together. He paused, swallowing hard. None of that happened, and I had to let go of those dreams to make room for new ones. What if I don't want new dreams? Sophie's voice cracked. What if I just want the old ones back? Then you hold on to them for as long as you need to, Marcus said. There's no timeline for grief, Sophie. No right way to do this. They stood together at the window, watching the city wake up below them. Cars pulling out of parking spots, people walking dogs, the mailman starting his route. Life continuing, indifferent to their pain. Sophie's phone buzzed, and she pulled it from her pocket with a sigh. My sister. She's been texting every hour to make sure I'm still alive. That's love, Marcus pointed out. That's anxiety masquerading as love. But Sophie texted back anyway, her fingers moving quickly across the screen. She wants to come stay with me for a week. She means well, but sometimes you need to be alone with it, Marcus finished. Exactly. Sophie pocketed her phone. Is that terrible? That I don't want company? It's human. Sophie looked at him then, really looked at him, as if seeing him clearly for the first time. How did you do this alone, with a daughter to take care of? Not well at first, Marcus said honestly. There were days I forgot to feed myself, days I couldn't get out of bed, days I snapped at Lily for no reason and then hated myself for it. He ran a hand through his hair. But kids are resilient, and they force you to keep moving forward because they need you to. I don't have that, Sophie said quietly. I don't have anyone who needs me to keep moving forward. You have yourself, Marcus said. That has to be enough. Sophie was quiet for a long moment. Then she unwrapped the blanket from her shoulders and folded it carefully. I should go. Let you get to work. I'm sure you have things to do besides babysitting your disaster of a neighbor. Sophie, no, really. I've already taken up too much of your morning. She managed a weak smile. But thank you, Marcus. For the coffee and the pancake and the honesty. For not treating me like I'm fragile. You're not fragile, Marcus said. You're grieving. There's a difference. Sophie moved toward the door, then paused with her hand on the knob. Can I ask you something? Of course. Does it ever stop hurting? The missing them part? Marcus thought about Emma, about waking up and reaching for her before remembering she wasn't there, about hearing a song she loved and feeling that punch of loss, about watching Lily grow up and wishing Emma could see the amazing person their daughter was becoming. No, he said softly. But you learn to carry it differently. The weight doesn't get lighter, but you get stronger. Sophie nodded, her eyes glistening with fresh tears. Okay. She left then, pulling the door closed behind her with a soft click. Marcus stood in the sudden silence of his apartment, the empty coffee mug on the table, the rumpled blanket on the couch, the faint scent of Sophie's perfume lingering in the air. His phone buzzed again. The 9 a.m. meeting was in 45 minutes. He needed to shower, change, set up his laptop for the video call. Life demanded he keep moving forward, whether he felt ready or not. But as Marcus headed to his bedroom, he found himself hoping Sophie would knock again tomorrow. The rest of Tuesday passed in a blur of video conferences and code reviews. Marcus worked from his small home office, really just a desk wedged into the corner of his bedroom, fielding questions from his team and debugging a particularly stubborn piece of software that refused to cooperate. Around noon, he heated up leftover spaghetti and ate it standing at the kitchen counter, scrolling through emails on his phone. At 3:15, he walked back to the corner of Maple and 3rd to meet Lily's bus. The afternoon was warmer than the morning had been, and Marcus shed his hoodie, tying it around his waist. The bus arrived on time, and Lily bounced down the steps with the energy of someone who'd been sitting still for too long. "How was school?" Marcus asked, taking her backpack. "Good. We learned about the water cycle, and I got 100% on my spelling test, and Sarah's cupcakes were chocolate with pink frosting." She grabbed his hand as they walked. "Is Mrs. Bennett still at our house?" "No, honey. She went home a few hours ago." "Is she still sad?" "Yes, but maybe a little less sad than this morning." Lily seemed to accept this. They walked home in comfortable silence, and Marcus let her watch an hour of cartoons while he finished up his workday. At 5, he started dinner, chicken stir-fry with vegetables, one of the 5 meals he'd mastered in his single-dad repertoire. "Set the table, please," he called to Lily. She appeared with plates and forks, arranging them with the careful precision of someone who took her responsibilities seriously. As she worked, Marcus heard a door open in the hallway, then close. Footsteps passed by their door. Sophie, he guessed, probably going to get her mail or take out the trash. He didn't see her again that evening, but the next morning, at exactly 7 a.m., the knock came again. Marcus had just flipped the first pancake when he heard it, that same urgent rhythm that seemed to bypass his ears and go straight to his heart. He glanced at Lily, who was still in her pajamas, eating cereal at the table. "It's Mrs. Bennett," Lily announced with certainty. Marcus opened the door to find Sophie standing in the hallway, and his heart clenched. She was wearing different clothes, jeans and a sweater, but she looked just as lost as she had yesterday. "I'm sorry," she said immediately. "I know I shouldn't keep bothering you, but I woke up and the silence was back and I need to not be alone right now." "Come in," Marcus said, stepping aside. And just like that, it became a routine. Every morning at 7 a.m., Sophie would knock. Marcus would let her in, pour her coffee, drape the blue blanket over her shoulders. Sometimes she cried. Sometimes she sat in silence, staring at nothing. Sometimes she talked. About David, about their life together, about the unfairness of it all. Marcus never pushed. He simply made her coffee, made sure she ate something, a pancake, a piece of toast, whatever he had on hand, and gave her a safe place to fall apart. Lily accepted Sophie's presence with the easy adaptability of children. She'd chat with Sophie about school, show her drawings, tell her elaborate stories about her imaginary friend who lived in the clouds, and Sophie, despite her grief, would engage with genuine interest, asking questions and offering praise. "You're good with her," Marcus observed one morning after Lily had left for school. Sophie had been coming for over a week now, and the ritual had become as natural as breathing. Sophie looked up from her coffee, surprised. "Lily makes it easy. She doesn't expect me to be okay. She just lets me exist." "She learned that from experience," Marcus said quietly. They were sitting at his small kitchen table, the breakfast dishes already washed and drying in the rack. Morning sunlight streamed through the window, catching dust motes in its beams. It was the kind of peaceful moment that felt both ordinary and precious. "Can I ask you something?" Sophie said, her fingers tracing the rim of her mug. "Always." "Why do you do this? Let me invade your mornings, interrupt your routine, dump all my grief on you?" Marcus considered the question carefully. Why did he open his door every morning to a grieving widow? Why did he make her coffee and share his space and let her tears soak into his couch cushions? "Because someone did it for me," he finally said. "After Emma died, my sister Rachel showed up every morning for 3 months. She'd make breakfast, help with Lily, just be there. She never made me talk about it. She just showed up." He met Sophie's eyes. "You need someone to show up for you right now. I can do that." Sophie's eyes filled with tears, something that happened multiple times every visit, but she smiled through them. "You're a good person, Marcus Cole." "I'm just a person," Marcus corrected, "trying to do what I can." They fell into comfortable silence, sipping their coffee. Outside, the city continued its daily rhythm, sirens in the distance, construction noise from a few blocks over, the rumble of delivery trucks making their rounds. "I went back to work yesterday," Sophie said suddenly. Marcus looked up, surprised. "How did that go?" "Terrible." She laughed, a brittle sound. "I made it 2 hours before I had a panic attack in the bathroom. My boss sent me home, told me to take more time." "Maybe you need more time," Marcus suggested gently. "Maybe. But time for what? To sit in my apartment and drown in silence? At least work is a distraction." She set down her mug with more force than necessary. "Everyone keeps telling me to take care of myself, to rest, to heal. But no one tells me how to do that." "Because there's no manual," Marcus said. "No step-by-step guide for surviving the death of your spouse. You just figure it out as you go." "Did you figure it out?" Marcus thought about those early days after Emma's death, the fog of grief so thick he could barely function, the nights he'd cried into his pillow so Lily wouldn't hear, the mornings he'd forced himself out of bed through sheer willpower because his daughter needed breakfast. "Eventually," he said. "But it took longer than I thought it would, and it wasn't linear. Some days I'd think I was okay, and then something small would knock me back to square one." "What kind of things?" Sophie asked, leaning forward slightly. "The first time Lily lost a tooth, and Emma wasn't there to put money under her pillow. The first parent-teacher conference where I was the only one sitting in the chair. The first time I had to explain to someone that I was widowed, not divorced." Marcus paused, remembering. Finding Emma's coffee mug in the back of the cabinet, still bearing the lipstick mark from the last time she used it. Sophie's breath caught. "I haven't touched David's things yet. His clothes are still in the closet. His toothbrush is still by the sink. His coffee mug, the one that says World's Okayest Accountant, is still in the dish drainer where he left it last week." "There's no rush," Marcus said firmly. "Pack them up when you're ready, not when someone else thinks you should be ready." "When did you pack up Emma's things?" 6 months. Marcus's voice was soft. "Rachel wanted me to do it sooner, said it would help me move on, but I wasn't ready. Then one day I woke up and I was." Sophie nodded slowly, processing this. "Everyone has opinions about how I should grieve. My sister thinks I should join a support group. My mother thinks I should sell the apartment and move back home. My friends think I should stay busy, keep myself distracted." "What do you think?" Marcus asked. Sophie was quiet for a long moment. "I think I don't know how to exist in a world where David doesn't. I think every morning I wake up and remember all over again that he's gone, and it's like being hit by a truck. I think—" Her voice broke. "I think I'm angry." "Angry is allowed," Marcus said immediately. "Is it? Because everyone keeps telling me about the stages of grief like they're a checklist I need to complete. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Like if I just hit all 5, I'll be fine." She laughed bitterly. "But I'm stuck in anger and I don't know how to move past it." Marcus reached across the table and gently touched her hand. "Grief isn't a checklist, Sophie. It's a mess. It's complicated and non-linear and different for everyone. If you need to be angry right now, be angry." "I'm angry at David for dying," Sophie whispered, as if confessing a sin. "I'm angry at the doctors who didn't catch his heart defect. I'm angry at the universe for being so unfair. I'm angry at everyone who still has their spouse when mine is gone. And then I feel guilty for being angry, Because how can I be mad at a dead man? You can, Marcus said firmly. You can be angry and sad and grateful and relieved and guilty all at the same time. Grief is big enough to hold all of those feelings. Sophie pulled her hand back and wiped at her eyes. Were you angry when Emma died? Furious, Marcus admitted. She was 31 years old. We had our whole lives ahead of us, and then a drunk driver ran a red light, and in an instant, everything changed. I was angry at the driver, angry at Emma for being in the wrong place at the wrong time, angry at myself for not insisting she stay home that day. Do you still feel angry? Sometimes, but mostly I've learned to redirect it. I channel it into being the best father I can be for Lily, into advocating for stricter drunk driving laws, into living a life Emma would have been proud of. He paused. The anger doesn't go away completely, but it evolves. Sophie absorbed this, her expression thoughtful. I don't know what to do with all these feelings. They're so big, and I'm so small. You're not small, Marcus said. You're human-sized. The feelings are human-sized, too. They just feel enormous because you're experiencing all of them at once. The clock on the wall ticked forward. 8:47. Marcus had a meeting at 9, but he found he didn't want to rush Sophie out. This conversation felt important, like they were building something fragile but necessary. I should go, Sophie said, as if reading his mind. Let you get to work. You don't have to, Marcus said, but Sophie was already standing, folding the blue blanket with careful precision. I do, but... She hesitated at the door, her hand on the knob. Same time tomorrow? Marcus smiled. Same time tomorrow. And she was gone, leaving behind the faint scent of her perfume and the empty coffee mug on the table. Marcus cleaned up quickly, then settled at his desk for the 9 a.m. meeting. But as his co-workers discussed project timelines and deliverables, his mind kept drifting to Sophie, to the raw pain in her eyes, to the way she was trying so hard to be okay when she clearly wasn't, to the anger she was finally allowing herself to feel. He understood that anger. He'd lived in it for months after Emma died, and he hoped that by being present for Sophie, by giving her a safe place to feel all the messy, complicated emotions of grief, he could help her through it a little faster than he'd made it through himself. The days continued to blend together in this new routine. Sophie at 7 a.m., coffee and conversation. Lily chattering through breakfast, school drop-off, work, school pickup, dinner, bedtime, repeat. But something was shifting imperceptibly at first. Sophie's tears came less frequently. Her silences grew more comfortable than desperate. She started asking Marcus about his life, about his work, his hobbies, the things he did when Lily was asleep, and he had rare moments to himself. I don't really have hobbies anymore, Marcus admitted one Friday morning, nearly 3 weeks into their routine. Everything is work or Lily. That sounds lonely, Sophie observed. Marcus shrugged. It's life. Single parents don't get a lot of free time. But you must do something for yourself. Read? Watch movies? I fall asleep 10 minutes into any movie I try to watch, Marcus said with a rueful smile. And I mostly read articles about parenting or software development, riveting stuff. Sophie studied him with an expression he couldn't quite read. When was the last time you did something just for you? Something that had nothing to do with being a parent or an employee. Marcus had to think about it. Before Emma died, probably. We used to go hiking on weekends, take turns picking restaurants to try, see concerts. He paused, surprised by the memory. I used to paint, actually. Nothing good, but I enjoyed it. Why did you stop? Time, money, life. Marcus gestured vaguely. When Emma died, survival became the priority. Everything else fell away. Sophie was quiet for a moment, then, That's sad, Marcus. It's practical. It can be both. That conversation stayed with Marcus throughout the day. That evening, after Lily was asleep, he found himself digging through the closet, pushing past boxes of old clothes and forgotten belongings, until he found them. His art supplies, dusty and neglected. He pulled out a canvas, brushes, paints that had probably dried out years ago. He didn't paint anything that night, but he set up the supplies on the kitchen table, a promise to himself that maybe, someday, he'd remember what it felt like to create something just because he wanted to. The next morning was Saturday, which meant no school, no work, and a rare opportunity to sleep past 6 a.m. Except at exactly 7, the knock came. Marcus, still in his pajama pants and a faded t-shirt, opened the door to find Sophie looking different. She was smiling, not the polite practice smile she'd given at the funeral, but a real smile that reached her eyes. "Good morning," she said brightly. "I brought bagels." And indeed, she was holding a bag from the bakery 2 blocks over, the good bakery that made everything fresh daily. Good morning," Marcus said, surprised. "You brought bagels. I realized I've been showing up here every morning for 3 weeks, drinking your coffee and eating your food, and I haven't contributed anything." Sophie held up the bag. "So, bagels and cream cheese. And—" She pulled a juice box from her pocket with a flourish. "Apple juice for Lily, because she mentioned it's her favorite." Marcus stepped aside, bemused but pleased. "Come in." Lily emerged from her bedroom, drawn by the sound of voices, and lit up when she saw Sophie. "Mrs. Bennet, did you bring the bagels?" "I did. Cinnamon raisin for you. Everything bagels for me and your dad." They settled around the kitchen table, and for the first time since Sophie had started her morning visits, the mood felt light. Lily chattered about her plans for the day, a play date with her friend Emma at the park, and Sophie listened with genuine interest, asking questions and laughing at Lily's dramatic retellings of third-grade drama. Marcus watched them together, something warm unfurling in his chest. Sophie was good with kids, patient and kind. She didn't talk down to Lily or dismiss her concerns as trivial. She treated her like a person who had things worth saying. After breakfast, Lily excused herself to get dressed for her play date, and Sophie helped Marcus clear the table. "You seem better today," Marcus observed, loading the dishwasher. Sophie paused, a plate in her hands. "I had a good cry last night. A really good one. The kind that leaves you exhausted, but somehow lighter." She set the plate in the rack carefully. "And I woke up this morning and thought, I should bring Marcus bagels. So I did." "Well, I appreciate the bagels." "It's the least I can do." Sophie dried her hands on a dish towel. "You've been so kind to me, Marcus, letting me fall apart in your home every morning, never making me feel like a burden. I don't think I've properly thanked you." "You don't need to thank me," Marcus said. "I'm glad I could help." "But you have helped, more than you know." Sophie leaned against the counter, her expression serious. "These mornings with you and Lily, they've been the only time I feel like I can breathe." "Like the grief isn't suffocating me. You give me a reason to get out of bed, even when I don't want to." Marcus felt something shift in the air between them, a subtle change he couldn't quite name. "Sophie, I know what you're going to say," she interrupted gently. "That you're just being a good neighbor, a good person. But it's more than that, Marcus. You see me. Not the widow, not the tragedy, but me." The kitchen felt suddenly too small, the air too charged. Marcus cleared his throat. "I see someone who's grieving and needs support. That's what I see." Sophie smiled, sad and knowing. "Sometimes I think you see more than that." Before Marcus could respond, before he even knew how to respond, Lily bounded back into the kitchen, wearing her favorite purple dress and light-up sneakers. "I'm ready," she announced. "Can we go to the park now?" Marcus grabbed his keys with relief, grateful for the interruption. "Let me grab my shoes." Sophie moved toward the door. "I should get going anyway. Let you have your Saturday." "You don't have to leave," Marcus said automatically. "I know, but I think I'm going to try going to a coffee shop today. Sit somewhere other than my apartment or your living room. Maybe read a book." She smiled at Lily. "Thanks for letting me crash your breakfast, kiddo." "You can crash it any time," Lily said seriously. "That's what Dad says about friends." Sophie's eyes met Marcus's over Lily's head, and something unspoken passed between them. "Your dad is right." As Marcus walked Lily to the park, his daughter swinging their joined hands between them, she looked up at him with those two knowing eyes. "I like Mrs. Bennet," she announced. "I like her too," Marcus said carefully. "She's not as sad anymore." "No, she's getting better." "Good," Lily said with satisfaction. "I want her to be happy again, like you're happy again." Marcus's steps faltered. "What makes you think I'm happy again?" Lily gave him a look that suggested she thought he was being deliberately obtuse. "You smile more now, and you laugh at my jokes even when they're not funny, and you don't make that face anymore." "What face?" The sad face you used to make when you thought I wasn't looking. Marcus felt his throat tighten. Sometimes he forgot how perceptive his daughter was, how much she noticed even when he thought he was hiding things from her. I am happy, he said honestly. Because I have you, and we're okay. And because Mrs. Bennet comes over, Lily added matter-of-factly. Marcus didn't know how to respond to that, so he didn't. They reached the park, and Lily spotted her friend Emma on the swings and ran off with barely a goodbye. Marcus joined the other parents on the benches, pulling out his phone to check emails while keeping one eye on the playground. But his mind wasn't on work emails or watching Lily navigate the monkey bars. He was thinking about Sophie's words. Sometimes I think you see more than that. Did he? See more than a grieving widow who needed support? When Marcus let himself really consider it, the answer was uncomfortable in its clarity. Yes. He saw Sophie's strength beneath the grief, her sharp sense of humor that emerged in unexpected moments, the way she listened with her whole attention when someone spoke. Her kindness toward Lily, never patronizing or false, the way she took her coffee, 2 creams, 1 sugar, and how she folded the blue blanket after every visit with the same careful precision. He saw the person she was, and the person she would be again once the grief released its stranglehold. And somewhere in the past 3 weeks, he'd started to look forward to that 7 a.m. knock, to the morning ritual of coffee and conversation, to the quiet companionship that asked nothing but offered everything, which terrified him, because Marcus had spent 3 years building a life that was carefully balanced around him and Lily, a life that was safe, predictable, protected from further heartbreak. Adding someone new to that equation felt dangerous, like tempting fate to shatter his hard-won stability. And beyond that, Sophie was grieving. She'd buried her husband less than a month ago. Whatever she was feeling toward Marcus, if she was feeling anything beyond gratitude for a sympathetic ear, was probably tangled up in loss and loneliness and the desperate need to not feel alone. He couldn't take advantage of that. Wouldn't. So Marcus decided, sitting on a park bench while Lily played with her friends, that he would maintain appropriate boundaries. He would continue to be a good neighbor, a supportive friend. Nothing more. It was the right decision. The only decision, even if something in his chest ached at the thought. Sunday morning came without a knock. Marcus woke at his usual time, made pancakes for Lily, and tried not to check the door every few minutes. Sophie was probably sleeping in, or spending time with her family, or simply taking a break from her daily visits to his apartment. All perfectly reasonable explanations. The day felt strangely empty without her morning presence. Monday's 7 a.m. knock came as a relief Marcus wouldn't admit to anyone but himself. "Good morning," Sophie said when he opened the door. She looked tired, dark circles under her eyes, but her smile was genuine. "I hope I didn't worry you skipping yesterday." "Of course not," Marcus lied. "Come in, coffee's fresh." They settled into their familiar routine, and Marcus realized with some surprise that this had become as natural as any other part of his morning. Sophie on the couch, blue blanket over her shoulders, coffee mug warming her hands. Him in the armchair, sometimes drinking his own coffee, sometimes just listening. "I saw David's parents yesterday," Sophie said quietly. "They wanted to go through some of his things, pick out items to keep." "How did that go?" "Hard." Sophie stared into her coffee. His mother cried the entire time. His father kept telling stories about David as a kid, like if he talked enough, he could bring him back. And I just felt hollow. Hollow how? Like I'd used up all my grief and didn't have any left for them. Like I'd exhausted my capacity to feel. She looked up at Marcus. "Is that normal?" "There's no normal," Marcus reminded her. "But yes, I felt that too. This numbness that would settle in after particularly intense bouts of crying or anger. It's your mind's way of protecting you from being overwhelmed." "I wish my mind would protect me from the dreams," Sophie said darkly. "I keep having this one where David comes home and I'm so happy, and then I wake up and remember he's dead, and it's like losing him all over again." Marcus knew those dreams. He'd had them for months after Emma died. Dreams where she was alive and laughing. Dreams where he got to tell her he loved her one more time. Dreams where he woke up reaching for her side of the bed. "The dreams eventually change," he said. "They become less frequent, less vivid. Your mind is processing the loss even when you're asleep." "I hate it," Sophie whispered. "I hate all of it. I hate that I'm 32 years old and a widow. I hate that I have to learn how to be alone. I hate that people look at me with pity. I hate that my husband died and I'm still here, having to figure out how to keep living." The raw honesty of it hung in the air between them. Marcus set down his coffee and leaned forward. "I know," he said simply. "I know." And he did know. He knew the anger and the unfairness and the crushing weight of having to continue existing when half of your heart had been ripped away. He knew the exhaustion of grief, the way it seeped into everything until even breathing felt like too much effort. Sophie's eyes filled with tears, those familiar tears that Marcus had come to expect and accept as part of their mornings together. But this time, instead of crying quietly, she set down her mug and covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. Marcus stood and crossed to the couch, sitting beside her. He didn't touch her, didn't try to comfort her with empty platitudes. He simply sat close enough that she knew she wasn't alone. "I'm sorry," Sophie gasped between sobs. "I keep falling apart on your couch." "Stop apologizing for feeling your feelings," Marcus said firmly. "But Sophie, stop." She lowered her hands, looking at him with red-rimmed eyes. "You must be so tired of this, of me showing up every morning, dumping all my grief on you." "I'm not," Marcus said, and realized he meant it completely. "You're not a burden, Sophie. You're a person going through something terrible, and you need support. I'm glad I can be that support." "Why?" Sophie asked, her voice small. "Why do you care so much?" Marcus considered the question carefully. Why did he care? Was it just because he understood her pain from his own experience? Was it neighbor solidarity? Was it something more? "Because you're worth caring about," he finally said. "Because you showed up for my family when Emma died, even though you barely knew us. Because Lily thinks you're wonderful. Because—" He trailed off, not quite ready to finish that thought. "Because," Sophie prompted, her gaze intense. "Because somewhere in the past month you've become important to me," Marcus admitted. "You and these morning conversations, the honesty you bring, the way you don't pretend to be okay when you're not. It's—" He searched for the right word. "Refreshing." Sophie's expression softened. "You've become important to me too. This apartment, these mornings with you and Lily, they're the only time I feel like myself, like I'm still a person and not just a collection of grief and loss." They sat together on the couch, close but not touching, the air between them charged with something neither of them wanted to name. From her bedroom, Lily called out, "Dad, I can't find my math homework." The spell broke. Marcus stood quickly. "Check your backpack, front pocket." "Found it!" Sophie stood too, wrapping the blue blanket around herself even though the apartment was warm. "I should go, let you get Lily ready for school." But she didn't move toward the door. Instead, she looked at Marcus with an expression he couldn't quite read. Sadness mixed with something else. Something that made his heart beat a little faster. "Marcus," she said softly, "thank you for everything, for being patient with me, for letting me exist in my mess, for seeing me as more than just the sad widow across the hall." "You are more than that," Marcus said. "So much more." They stood there for a moment longer, something unspoken humming between them. Then Sophie moved to the door, and the moment passed. "Same time tomorrow?" she asked, her hand on the doorknob. "Same time tomorrow," Marcus confirmed. After she left, Marcus stood in his living room, the empty coffee mug in his hand, trying to understand what had just shifted. The boundaries he'd promised himself he'd maintain felt less clear than they had a few days ago. Lily appeared from her bedroom, backpack on, hair unbrushed. "Can Mrs. Bennett eat dinner with us sometime?" "Maybe," Marcus said, setting down the mug and reaching for Lily's hairbrush. "Turn around." As he brushed his daughter's tangles smooth, Marcus wondered if he was already in deeper than he'd intended, and if maybe, just maybe, that wasn't entirely a bad thing. The dinner invitation came on a Thursday, 6 weeks after Sophie's first knock on Marcus's door. Marcus had spent the entire day second-guessing himself. It was just dinner, he reasoned while reviewing code at his desk. A neighborly gesture. Sophie had been coming to his apartment every morning for weeks. Inviting her to stay for an evening meal was simply extending the hospitality he'd already been offering, except it felt like more than that, and Marcus knew it. "Mrs. Bennett is coming for dinner tonight," Lily announced to anyone who would listen at the bus stop that afternoon. The other parents smiled politely, and Marcus felt their curious gazes on him. The single dad, the widow from across the hall, the inevitable speculation. "It's just dinner," he told Mrs. Rodriguez, who'd raised an eyebrow. "Of course it is," she said with a knowing smile that made Marcus's neck heat. Back at the apartment, Lily insisted on helping with preparations, which meant Marcus had to gently redirect her enthusiasm away from adding chocolate chips to the salad. He'd decided on his grandmother's lasagna recipe, comfort food that felt substantial enough for a dinner guest, but not so elaborate it screamed trying too hard. "Should I set 3 places or 4?" Lily asked, carefully arranging forks beside plates. "3, sweetheart. Why would we need 4? Lily shrugged, a secretive smile playing at her lips. "Maybe Mommy's watching." Marcus's hand stilled on the cheese grater. Lily rarely mentioned Emma anymore, had learned to live in a world where her mother existed only in photographs and fading memories. Hearing her name now, spoken so casually, made something in Marcus's chest constrict. "Maybe she is," he said softly. "I think she'd like Mrs. Bennett," Lily continued, oblivious to the emotional grenade she'd just lobbed. "They both laugh at your jokes, even when they're not funny." "My jokes are hilarious," Marcus protested weakly. "Dad, you told me a joke about databases yesterday. Nobody laughs at database jokes." "Your brutal honesty is noted." At exactly 6 o'clock, the knock came. Marcus wiped his hands on a dish towel, suddenly nervous in a way that felt ridiculous. This was Sophie. The same Sophie who'd cried on his couch, who'd shared her deepest grief, who'd seen him in his rattiest pajamas at 7 in the morning. There was no reason to be nervous about dinner, but when he opened the door, his breath caught anyway. Sophie had dressed up, nothing excessive, just a simple green dress that brought out the color of her eyes, her hair styled in soft waves instead of the usual ponytail or messy bun. She held a bottle of wine and looked almost shy. "Hi," she said. "I wasn't sure what you were making, so I brought red. I hope that's okay." "It's perfect. Come in." Lily rushed forward before Marcus could say anything else, grabbing Sophie's hand and pulling her toward the kitchen. "Dad made lasagna and I helped set the table, and we have brownies for dessert," Sophie laughed, allowing herself to be tugged along. "That sounds wonderful. You must be an excellent helper." "I am." "Dad says I'm indispensable." "Indispensable," Marcus corrected, pulling the lasagna from the oven. "And yes, you are." They settled around the small kitchen table, and Marcus poured wine for himself and Sophie while Lily chattered about her day at school. The evening light slanted through the window, casting everything in gold. And for a moment, Marcus could almost pretend this was normal. A family dinner, a regular Thursday night, nothing complicated about it. "This is delicious," Sophie said after her first bite of lasagna. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" "My grandmother, she was Italian, very serious about food. She used to say that anyone who couldn't make a proper red sauce wasn't worth marrying." "Smart woman," Sophie said with a smile. Then to Lily, "Did your dad teach you to cook too?" "I can make scrambled eggs and grilled cheese," Lily said proudly, "and I can measure ingredients. But Dad won't let me use the stove by myself yet." "Because you're 8, Marcus reminded her. "When you're older." "That's what you always say?" They ate in comfortable rhythm, conversation flowing easily between bites. Sophie asked Lily about her favorite subjects in school, her friends, her hobbies. Lily answered enthusiastically, then turned the tables. "What did you like when you were my age?" Lily asked. Sophie considered this. "I loved reading. I'd hide under my covers with a flashlight and read way past bedtime. My parents were always catching me and taking away my books." "What kind of books?" "Everything. Fairy tales, mysteries, adventure stories. I wanted to live inside books because real life seemed boring by comparison." "Does it still seem boring?" Lily asked with that uncanny directness children possessed. Sophie's smile faltered slightly. "No. Real life got very interesting. Sometimes too interesting." Lily seemed to sense she'd touched something sensitive and switched topics with the resilience of youth. "Do you want to see my room after dinner? I have a new poster of the solar system." "I'd love to," Sophie said, and the moment passed. After dinner, while Lily gave Sophie the grand tour of her bedroom, which took approximately 3 minutes given its size, Marcus cleared the table and loaded the dishwasher. He could hear their voices through the thin walls, Lily's excited chatter and Sophie's warm responses, and something about it felt right in a way that both comforted and terrified him. When they returned to the living room, Lily clutched a book to her chest. "Mrs. Bennet, will you read to me before bed?" Marcus started to intervene. Bedtime reading was their ritual, his responsibility. But Sophie glanced at him, a question in her eyes. "If it's okay with your dad," Sophie said carefully. Marcus found himself nodding. "Of course." He cleaned the kitchen while Sophie and Lily curled up on the couch together, Sophie's voice rising and falling with the cadence of the story, some tale about a brave mouse on an adventure. When he finished wiping down the counters, he found a spot in the armchair, content to listen. Lily's eyes grew heavy halfway through the second chapter, and by the third she was asleep against Sophie's shoulder. "She's out," Marcus whispered, moving to carefully lift his daughter. "She's heavier than she looks," Sophie murmured as Marcus scooped Lily up. "She's growing too fast." Marcus carried Lily to her bedroom, tucked her in, kissed her forehead. When he returned to the living room, Sophie was standing by the window, looking out at the city lights. "Thank you for dinner," she said without turning around. "And for including me. I know this is probably weird, the grieving widow having dinner with the neighbor, but it felt normal. It felt nice to feel normal." Marcus joined her at the window, maintaining careful distance. "You're welcome here any time, Sophie. You know that." "I do, but I also know I can't keep showing up at your door every morning forever. At some point, I need to learn to stand on my own again." The words hit Marcus harder than he expected. Of course she couldn't keep coming forever. He'd known that. But hearing her say it made him realize how much he'd come to depend on those morning visits, on seeing her, talking to her, being part of her healing process. "There's no rush," he said, echoing the words he'd told her weeks ago. "Take the time you need." Sophie turned to face him, and in the dim light of the living room, her expression was difficult to read. "Marcus, can I ask you something?" "Always." "When did you know you were ready to start living again? Not just surviving, but actually living?" Marcus thought about it carefully. "I'm not sure there was one specific moment. It was gradual. Small things at first. Laughing at one of Lily's jokes without feeling guilty about it. Going a whole day without crying. Making plans for the future instead of just getting through the present." "I went a whole day without crying last week," Sophie said quietly. "And then I felt guilty, like I was betraying David by not being sad enough. That's normal too. The guilt that comes with healing feels worse than the grief sometimes." "How did you handle it?" "Badly, at first." Marcus managed a rueful smile. "I'd sabotage my own progress, find reasons to sink back into grief because it felt safer than moving forward. Rachel finally called me out on it, told me Emma would have been furious if she knew I was using her death as an excuse to stop living. Was she right? Completely. Emma was the most vibrant person I'd ever met. She grabbed life with both hands and wrung every drop of joy from it. She would have hated knowing I'd let her death diminish my own life." Sophie absorbed this, her fingers tracing patterns on the windowsill. David was like that too, always optimistic, always finding the silver lining. He'd tell me I worried too much, that I needed to enjoy the present instead of catastrophizing about the future. Her voice cracked. And then the worst thing I could imagine actually happened, and he wasn't here to tell me it would be okay. Marcus felt the weight of her pain as if it were his own. Without thinking, he reached out and touched her shoulder, a gentle, grounding pressure. "It will be okay," he said. "Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually." Sophie covered his hand with hers, and they stood like that for a long moment, connected by touch and shared understanding. Then she stepped back, wrapping her arms around herself. "I should go," she said. "It's getting late." Marcus walked her to the door, acutely aware of the changed atmosphere between them. Something had shifted during dinner, during the reading, during their conversation by the window. The easy friendship they'd built was becoming complicated by something neither of them had acknowledged aloud. At the door, Sophie paused. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course." "These past 6 weeks, coming here every morning, talking to you, being with you and Lily, it's been the thing keeping me afloat. You've given me a reason to get up, to get dressed, to keep moving forward. I don't know if I've told you how much that means." "You don't have to thank me, Sophie." "But I do. Because you didn't have to do any of this. You could have turned me away that first morning, told me to get grief counseling, or talk to my family, But you didn't. You just let me in. Marcus met her eyes, seeing the gratitude there, but also something else, something that made his heart beat faster. I'm glad you knocked on my door. Me too, Sophie whispered. She left then, crossing the hallway to her own apartment, and Marcus stood in his doorway watching until she was safely inside. Then he closed his door and leaned against it, trying to sort through the tangle of emotions in his chest. He was in trouble. He'd promised himself boundaries, promised himself he wouldn't let this become complicated. But somewhere between morning coffee and bedtime stories, Sophie had become more than just the grieving widow he was helping. She'd become someone he looked forward to seeing, someone whose smile made his day brighter, someone who understood loss in a way few others could, and that terrified him. The next morning, Sophie didn't knock. Marcus tried not to worry as he made pancakes, as he got Lily ready for school, as he walked her to the bus stop. Maybe Sophie was sleeping in. Maybe she needed a break from their routine. Maybe she'd decided to start standing on her own, just like she'd mentioned the night before. By noon, when she still hadn't knocked or texted, Marcus found himself standing outside her door, hand raised to knock, frozen with indecision. What if she wanted space? What if his concern came across as intrusive? But what if she needed help? He knocked. 3 firm raps. Silence. Marcus waited, counted to 30, knocked again. Still nothing. His phone was in his hand before he'd consciously decided to use it, fingers typing out a message. Everything okay? You didn't come by this morning. The response came 2 minutes later. Rough night. Sorry for worrying you. Need some time alone. Marcus stared at the words, trying to read between the lines. Was she pulling away? Had dinner been too much? Had he said something wrong during their conversation by the window? Or was she simply having a bad day, the kind that grief sometimes brought without warning? He typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on, I understand. I'm here if you need anything. Her reply was immediate. Thank you. Marcus returned to his apartment, the silence feeling oppressive in a way it hadn't before Sophie started her morning visits. He tried to focus on work, on the project deadline looming next week, but his mind kept wandering across the hall. That evening, Lily noticed Sophie's absence immediately. Where's Mrs. Bennet? She needed some time to herself today, Marcus said, stirring pasta sauce. Is she sad again? Maybe. Sometimes grief comes in waves and we need space to ride them out. Lily accepted this with the wisdom of a child who'd learned too young that sadness wasn't something that could be fixed with a Band-Aid. Should we save her some dinner? That's a kind thought, baby. After Lily was asleep, Marcus packed up a portion of their spaghetti and meatballs in a container, added a slice of the garlic bread Lily had helped him make, and stood outside Sophie's door for the second time that day. This time, he didn't knock. He simply left the container by her door with a note. Dinner if you're hungry. No pressure to talk. M. The next morning came without a knock. And the morning after that. By day 4, Marcus was genuinely worried. He texted Sophie twice more, both times receiving brief reassurances that she was fine, just needed time. But the absence of her morning presence had left a hole in his routine that felt disproportionate to the relatively short time she'd been filling it. Dad, you keep looking at the door, Lily observed over breakfast on Saturday morning. No, I don't. Yes, you do. You've looked at it 5 times since we sat down. Marcus set down his coffee mug. I'm just worried about Mrs. Bennet. Why don't you go check on her? She said she needed space. But what if she needs help and she's too sad to ask? Out of the mouths of babes. Marcus finished his coffee, checked that Lily was settled with her cartoons, and crossed the hallway. This time he knocked with purpose. It took almost a minute, but finally he heard movement inside. The door opened a crack and Sophie peered out. She looked exhausted, hair unwashed, wearing what appeared to be the same sweatpants she'd had on when he'd glimpsed her getting her mail 2 days ago. Marcus, she said, her voice hoarse. Can I come in? Sophie hesitated, then opened the door wider. Marcus stepped inside for the first time since David's death, and the difference was stark. The apartment, usually neat and organized when he'd visited before, was now a disaster. Dishes piled in the sink, laundry scattered across furniture, curtains drawn against the morning light. I'm sorry, Sophie said immediately. I know it's a mess. I couldn't... Hey. Marcus touched her arm gently. No apologies. Talk to me. What happened? Sophie's face crumpled. His mother came by on Thursday. She wanted more of David's things, and I let her in, and she started going through his closet, and she took his favorite sweater, the blue one he wore all the time, and She wrapped her arms around herself. I completely broke. Marcus guided her to the couch, moving aside a pile of unfolded laundry to make room. Tell me what you need. I don't know, I thought I was getting better, you know? I was having good days, I was laughing again, I was making plans, and then she took that sweater and it was like everything I'd built up just collapsed. Grief isn't linear, Marcus reminded her gently. You can have a week of good days, and then one thing triggers you back to the beginning. That doesn't mean you've lost progress. It feels like I have. Sophie's voice was small, defeated. I feel like I'm drowning again, like I did in those first days after he died. And I'm angry at myself for needing you so much, for becoming dependent on our morning routine, for not being stronger. Needing support isn't weakness, Sophie, but I can't keep showing up at your door every morning for the rest of my life. At some point, I have to learn to manage this on my own. Who says? Marcus challenged. Who made that rule? Why do you have to isolate yourself to prove you're healing? Sophie looked at him, confusion and surprise mingling on her face. Because that's what you do. You heal and you move on and you become independent again. Or, Marcus said carefully, you heal while building a support system. You move forward while letting people help carry the weight. Independence doesn't mean isolation, Sophie. But our morning coffee, it's not sustainable. You have work, you have Lily, you have your own life. I can't keep taking up your time. What if I want you to? The words hung between them, more revealing than Marcus had intended. Sophie's eyes widened, and he saw the moment she understood what he wasn't quite saying. Marcus, I'm not saying this to take advantage of your grief or vulnerability, he said quickly. I just need you to know that our morning routine, it's not a burden to me. I look forward to it, to seeing you, talking to you. You've become important to me, Sophie, and not just as someone I'm helping. Sophie was quiet for a long moment, her expression unreadable. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I can't do this right now. Marcus felt something sink in his chest. I understand. No, I don't think you do. Sophie turned to face him fully. Marcus, I like you. I like spending time with you and Lily. I like our conversations and the way you make me feel less alone. But David's been dead for 7 weeks. 7 weeks. And I'm sitting here feeling things for you that I shouldn't be feeling, and I don't know if they're real or if they're just my grief brain grasping for comfort. They can be both, Marcus said softly. But how do I know? How do I know if what I'm feeling is genuine or just a desperate attempt to fill the hole David left? Tears spilled down Sophie's cheeks. I love my husband, Marcus. I loved him so much. And he's barely cold in the ground, and I'm here having feelings for another man. What kind of person does that make me? Human, Marcus said firmly. It makes you human, Sophie. Grief and love aren't mutually exclusive. You can miss David and still have feelings for someone else. You can honor his memory while still living your life. Everyone will think I'm terrible. His parents, my family, our friends, they'll all think I moved on too fast, that I didn't really love him if I can already... She broke off, covering her face with her hands. Marcus wanted to pull her into his arms, to comfort her the way he'd done so many times before, but he sensed she needed space, needed to work through this without his touch confusing things further. What other people think doesn't matter, he said instead. What matters is what you feel, what you need, what's right for you. If that means pulling back from our morning routine, if it means not seeing me for a while, then that's what we'll do. But don't punish yourself for having feelings, Sophie. Don't add guilt to grief because you think that's what you're supposed to do. Sophie lowered her hands, her face blotchy and wet. I don't want to stop seeing you. That's the problem. I should want space to sort through my grief properly, but instead I just want to knock on your door every morning and pretend everything's normal. Then do that. It's not that simple. Why not? Because, Sophie gestured helplessly, because at some point, this thing between us is going to become something we have to address. And I'm not ready for that. I'm not ready to think about dating or relationships or anything beyond just surviving each day. Then we don't address it, Marcus said simply. We keep doing what we've been doing. Morning coffee, conversation, no pressure, no expectations. Just two people who understand each other, helping each other through hard times. And if the feelings don't go away, Marcus met her eyes steadily, then we deal with that when we're both ready, not before. Sophie studied his face for a long moment, searching for something. Whatever she found must have satisfied her because she nodded slowly. Okay? Okay? I'll knock on your door tomorrow morning, same time. I'll have coffee ready. They sat together in the dim apartment, surrounded by the physical manifestations of Sophie's spiral, and Marcus felt the tension slowly ease from his shoulders. This conversation had been necessary, painful, but clarifying. At least now they both knew where they stood, in limbo perhaps, but honest limbo. Can I ask you something? Sophie said after a while. Always. When you started having feelings for someone after Emma died, assuming you did, how did you handle it? Marcus hadn't expected that question. I haven't. Had feelings for anyone, I mean, not until... He stopped himself, but Sophie was already nodding. Not until me, she finished. Yeah. How do you handle the guilt? Marcus thought about it carefully. I remind myself that Emma would want me to be happy, that loving again doesn't mean I loved her less, that I'm allowed to have a full life, even if she can't be part of it anymore. He paused. But I'd be lying if I said the guilt doesn't creep in sometimes, that I don't wonder if it's too soon, or if I'm dishonoring her memory, or if I even deserve to feel this way. Do you? Feel guilty? About having feelings for you? Marcus considered the question honestly. Sometimes. But mostly, I just feel grateful that I can feel this way again at all. After Emma died, I thought that part of me was dead too. The part that could care about someone romantically, that could imagine a future with another person. You've shown me that part isn't dead, just dormant. Sophie's eyes were bright with unshed tears. David would have liked you, I think. We're both kind men who actually listened when people talked. That's rarer than it should be. I wish I'd known him better. Me too. Sophie wiped at her eyes. This is so strange, Marcus. Talking about our dead spouses while admitting we have feelings for each other. It's like the world's most depressing therapy session. Marcus laughed despite himself. Yeah, it's not exactly a typical conversation. Nothing about this situation is typical. They fell into silence again, but it was more comfortable now, less fraught. Marcus glanced around the apartment at the dishes and laundry and general disarray. Let me help you clean up, he offered. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. Besides, Lily's watching cartoons and I could use something productive to do. Sophie looked like she might argue, but then she simply nodded. Thank you. They worked together, Marcus washing dishes while Sophie folded laundry. It was domestic and comfortable, and Marcus found himself imagining what it might be like if this was their normal, cleaning up together, sharing space, building a life. But that was getting ahead of things. Way ahead. When the apartment was mostly restored to order, Marcus checked his phone and was surprised to see it was nearly noon. I should get back. Lily's probably bored out of her mind. Sophie walked him to the door. Marcus? Yeah? Thank you for checking on me, for understanding, for not making this weird. It's already weird, Marcus said with a slight smile. But that's okay. Weird can be good. Weird can be good, Sophie repeated as if testing the phrase. I like that. As Marcus crossed the hallway back to his own apartment, he heard Sophie's door close behind him with a soft click. Inside, he found Lily exactly where he'd left her, now deeply invested in a cartoon about talking animals. Is Mrs. Bennet okay? She asked without looking away from the screen. She will be. Good. Lily paused her show and turned to face him, her expression serious in a way that reminded Marcus of Emma. Dad, do you like Mrs. Bennet? Of course I do. She's our friend. No, I mean, do you like her? Like how Mommy and you liked each other? Marcus felt his heart stutter. 8 years old and impossibly perceptive. Why do you ask that? Because you smile differently when you talk about her. And you get that look. What look? The happy, worried look, like you're happy but also worried about being happy. Marcus sat down beside his daughter, marveling at her insight. That's very observant of you. So do you. There was no point in lying to her. Lily could read him too well. I think I might, but it's complicated, Lil. Mrs. Bennet just lost her husband. She's grieving, and I don't want to rush into anything or make things harder for her. Lily considered this with the solemnity of a judge. Would it be okay with Mommy? If you liked Mrs. Bennet? The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. What do you think? I think Mommy would want you to be happy. She always said happiness was the most important thing. She did say that. And Mrs. Bennet makes you happy, right? She does, Marcus admitted. Then I think it's okay. Lily snuggled against his side. And I like her too. She's nice and she reads good stories and she doesn't talk to me like I'm a baby. Marcus wrapped his arm around his daughter, pulling her close. You're pretty amazing, you know that? I know, Lily said without a trace of arrogance, just simple fact. Can we have mac and cheese for lunch? Sure, baby. As Marcus stood to make lunch, he felt lighter than he had in days. The conversation with Sophie had been difficult but necessary. They'd acknowledged the attraction, the complications, the grief that still colored everything, but they'd also decided to keep moving forward together, whatever that looked like. The next morning, at exactly 7 a.m., the knock came. Marcus opened the door to find Sophie standing there in jeans and a sweater, her hair still damp from the shower, a tentative smile on her face. Good morning, she said. Good morning. Come in. They settled into their routine as if the past 5 days hadn't happened. Coffee and familiar mugs, Sophie wrapped in the blue blanket, comfortable silence punctuated by easy conversation. Lily emerged from her bedroom and greeted Sophie with an enthusiastic hug that made Sophie's eyes well up. I missed you, Lily said simply. I missed you too, sweetheart. Life resumed its rhythm. Morning coffee with Sophie, school drop-offs and pickups, work deadlines and conference calls, dinner preparations and bedtime routines. But now there was an undercurrent of awareness, of possibility, that hadn't existed before. Marcus caught himself watching Sophie when she wasn't looking, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking, the slight furrow between her eyebrows when Lily asked her complicated questions, the genuine warmth of her laugh when something truly amused her. And sometimes he'd look up to find her watching him with the same quiet intensity. They didn't talk about it, didn't address the tension that hummed between them like a live wire. They simply existed in this strange limbo, two people grieving their past while cautiously, carefully, building something new. The weeks rolled forward, autumn deepening into the early kiss of winter. Sophie started returning to work part-time, finding her footing in a world that had continued without David. She still came by most mornings, though sometimes she'd text that she was having a rough day and needed space. Marcus learned to read those texts, to know when space meant alone and when it meant please check on me anyway. Lily's school had a fall festival in October, and Sophie came along without being asked, helping Lily navigate the ring toss and cheering when she won a small stuffed bear. Parents Marcus barely knew gave them speculative looks. The single dad, the young widow, the little girl who seemed happy with both of them. People are staring, Sophie murmured as they watched Lily attempt the cakewalk. Let them, Marcus said. Doesn't it bother you? Not really. They can think whatever they want. They don't know our story. Sophie glanced at him, something shifting in her expression. What is our story, Marcus? It was the first time either of them had directly addressed it since that conversation in her apartment weeks ago. Marcus kept his eyes on Lily, navigating how to answer honestly. I think we're still writing it, he said finally. And if people assume we're together? Are we? The question hung in the crisp October air. Lily won the cakewalk and came running over with a chocolate sheet cake, her face flushed with victory, saving them both from having to answer. That night, after Lily was asleep and the festival cake was put away, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. I don't know what we are, but I know I don't want to lose you. He typed back, You won't. Whatever this is, wherever it goes, you won't lose me. Her response came 5 minutes later. I think I'm starting to believe in second chances again. Marcus stared at those words for a long time, his heart doing complicated things in his chest. Second chances. The possibility of love after loss. The courage to hope again. Me too, he finally typed back. And across the hall, in her apartment that no longer felt quite so empty, Sophie smiled at her phone and felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. November arrived with early frost and the kind of gray skies that made Marcus want to stay in bed an extra hour. But routine didn't care about weather or exhaustion, so he was up at his usual time, making coffee and trying to remember if Lily had a science project due this week or next. The knock came at 7 on the dot, and Marcus smiled despite himself. Sophie's punctuality had become something he could set his watch by. "Morning," she said when he opened the door, stamping cold from her feet. She'd started keeping a coat at his place, hanging it by the door alongside Lily's backpack and his own jacket. Small things that spoke of permanence, of belonging. "Cold out there?" "Freezing. Winter came early this year." Sophie made a beeline for the coffee pot, pouring herself a cup and wrapping both hands around it. "Lily still sleeping?" "Up in about 10 minutes if she's following her usual pattern." Marcus slid a plate of cinnamon toast across the counter. "I made extras." "You always make extras?" But Sophie took a piece anyway, biting into it with appreciation. "Have I mentioned you're going to make me gain 10 pounds with all this breakfast food? Have I mentioned you needed to gain 10 pounds? It was true. In the 3 months since David's death, Sophie had lost weight she couldn't afford to lose, grief carving her features sharper. But lately Marcus had noticed her clothes fitting better, color returning to her cheeks. She was eating again, sleeping again, laughing again. She was healing, and Marcus was grateful to witness it. "David's birthday is next week," Sophie said quietly, studying her coffee. "November 15th. He would have been 35. Marcus set down his own cup, giving her his full attention. They'd navigated several difficult dates already. The 2-month anniversary of David's death, the day that would have been their 7th wedding anniversary, the first Halloween without him. Each one had brought its own particular pain, its own brand of grief. "What do you want to do?" Marcus asked carefully. "I don't know. His parents want to have a memorial service at their house. My sister thinks I should take the day off work and do something for myself. My therapist, yes, I finally started seeing one, says I should honor my feelings, whatever they are." "And what are your feelings?" Sophie was quiet for a long moment, watching steam rise from her coffee. "I want to acknowledge it. I want to remember him and miss him and be sad. But I also don't want to spend the whole day drowning in grief. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense. I keep thinking about what you said, about Emma wanting you to be happy. I think David would want that too. He hated when I was sad. He'd do these ridiculous things to make me laugh. Terrible impressions, stupid dances, truly awful puns." Her smile was soft with memory. "So maybe I should honor his birthday by trying to find some joy in the day, not just sorrow." Marcus reached across the counter and touched her hand briefly. "That sounds like a beautiful way to honor him. Will you help me?" The question came out rushed, uncertain. "I don't want to be alone that day, but I also don't want to be with people who only see me as the grieving widow. I want to be with someone who sees me as just me." "Of course I'll help, whatever you need." The relief on Sophie's face was palpable. "Thank you. I was afraid to ask, afraid it was too much or too weird or—" "Sophie." Marcus waited until she met his eyes. "Nothing you ask of me will ever be too much." The weight of those words settled between them, meaning more than the simple sentence suggested. Sophie's breath caught, and for a moment Marcus thought she might say something, acknowledge the thing that had been growing between them for months now. But Lily's bedroom door opened, and the moment passed. "Good morning," Lily announced, padding into the kitchen in her dinosaur pajamas. She climbed onto the stool beside Sophie and immediately stole a piece of her cinnamon toast. "Are you coming to my class presentation tomorrow, Mrs. Bennett?" "What presentation?" Sophie asked, shooting Marcus a questioning look. "I didn't know either until last night," Marcus said. "Apparently it's been on the calendar for weeks, but someone forgot to mention it." Lily had the grace to look sheepish. "We're doing presentations about people we admire. I'm doing mine about both my parents." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Both?" "Yeah, Mommy for being brave when she was sick, and you for being brave after she died." Lily said it so matter-of-factly, as if she hadn't just reached into Marcus's chest and squeezed his heart. "Mrs. Bennett, you should come. It's at 2:00. Sophie glanced at Marcus, seeking permission. He nodded, not trusting his voice. "I'd be honored," Sophie said softly. The next afternoon found Marcus and Sophie sitting in two small chairs in Lily's third-grade classroom, surrounded by other parents with their phones out, ready to record their children's moments of glory. Marcus recognized a few faces from the bus stop, and he saw the way some of them looked at Sophie beside him, drawing conclusions, making assumptions. He didn't care. Lily stood at the front of the classroom, poster board in hand, her voice clear and confident as she talked about her mother's strength, her father's love, the family they'd built together, and the family that remained. She showed pictures, Emma holding baby Lily at the hospital, Marcus teaching Lily to ride a bike, the three of them at the beach the summer before Emma died. Marcus felt tears prick his eyes, but he smiled through them, so proud of his daughter's courage he could barely stand it. When Lily finished, the classroom erupted in applause. She bounded back to her seat, grinning widely, and Marcus gave her a thumbs up. Beside him, Sophie was crying silently, tears streaming down her face. Marcus handed her a tissue, and she took it with a watery smile. "She's remarkable," Sophie whispered. "She is." "She gets that from you." Marcus shook his head. "She gets that from Emma. I'm just trying not to screw it up." After the presentations, parents milled around the classroom, offering congratulations and small talk. Marcus was cornered by Mrs. Rodriguez, who wanted to discuss the upcoming winter concert, when he noticed Sophie crouched down beside Lily, the two of them deep in conversation. "Your mom would be so proud of you," Sophie was saying, her hand gentle on Lily's shoulder. "That was beautiful, sweetheart." "Do you think she was watching?" Lily asked, that same question she'd asked months ago about setting 4 places for dinner. "I think if there's any way she could watch, she would have been here," Sophie said. "And I think she would have been so happy to see how loved you are, how well you're doing." Lily threw her arms around Sophie's neck, hugging her tightly. And Sophie hugged back, this woman who'd lost so much, giving comfort to a little girl who understood loss too. Marcus's heart felt too big for his chest. That evening, after Lily was asleep, Marcus found himself on his phone, typing and deleting a message to Sophie 6 times before finally settling on, "Thank you for coming today. It meant a lot to Lily, and to me." Her response came quickly. "Thank you for including me. Being part of your lives has given me something to hold on to when everything else felt like it was slipping away." Marcus stared at those words, then made a decision. He crossed the hallway and knocked on Sophie's door. She answered, still dressed, a book in her hand, surprise written across her face. "Marcus, is everything okay? Can we talk?" "Of course, come in." Sophie's apartment had transformed in recent months. The oppressive silence had been replaced with life. Music playing softly from her phone, plants on the windowsill, photos on the walls that included both memories of David and new moments with Marcus and Lily. It was the home of someone learning to live again. They sat on her couch, and Marcus tried to find the words for what he needed to say. "I've been thinking a lot lately," he started, "about timing and grief and what's appropriate and what isn't, and I keep coming back to the same conclusion." Sophie waited, her expression guarded but attentive. "I have feelings for you," Marcus said, deciding to just be direct. "Real feelings. The kind that make me look forward to 7 a.m. even though I'm not a morning person. The kind that make me want to text you about stupid things during the day just to make you smile. The kind that make me think about a future that includes more than just morning coffee." Sophie's breath caught, but she didn't interrupt. "And I know the timing is terrible," Marcus continued. "I know you're still grieving, still healing. I know there are 1,000 reasons why we should wait, why we shouldn't complicate things, why I should keep these feelings to myself." He paused, gathering courage. "But watching you with Lily today, seeing you become part of our lives, I realized I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to hide how I feel, or pretend this is just friendship, or convince myself that waiting for some perfect moment makes sense. Marcus, let me finish, please." Marcus took a breath. "I'm not asking you to make any decisions tonight. I'm not asking you to feel the same way or to be ready for something you're not ready for. I just need you to know that I'm here, and I care about you. And when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'm willing to take that risk with you." Sophie was crying now, tears sliding down her face in the lamplight. "You can't just say things like that to me." "Why not?" "Because I'm trying so hard to do this the right way, to grieve properly, to not rush into anything, to make sure whatever I feel is real, and not just some desperate attempt to fill the void David left. Her voice cracked. And then you say beautiful things like that, and I just want to forget about timing and appropriateness and throw myself into this thing between us. Then do it, Marcus said softly. It's been 3 months, Marcus. 3 months since I buried my husband. What will people think? I don't care what people think. Do you? Sophie wiped at her eyes, frustrated. I don't know. Maybe. His parents already barely speak to me because I went back to work. If they found out that we were, she couldn't finish the sentence. Dating? Marcus supplied. Together? In love? Any of those things. Sophie stood, pacing to the window. I love David. I love him still. I'm not over him, Marcus. I don't know if I'll ever be completely over him.
How is that fair to you? Marcus stood too, crossing to stand beside her. I don't need you to be over him. I don't need you to stop loving him or missing him or grieving him. I just need you to be honest with me about what you feel. What I feel is terrified, Sophie whispered. I'm terrified of moving too fast. I'm terrified of hurting you. I'm terrified of my own heart because it seems capable of holding grief and love at the same time, and I don't understand how that's possible.
It's possible because you're human, Marcus said. Because life is complicated and messy and doesn't follow any timeline we try to impose on it. Emma's been gone 3 years and I still love her, still miss her. But I also have feelings for you. Both things are true. Both things can coexist. Sophie turned to face him, searching his expression. When did you know? That you had feelings for me? Marcus thought about it. Maybe that first morning when you showed up at my door in your funeral dress. Maybe when you held Lily while she told you about her mom. Maybe every morning between then and now. He managed a small smile. There wasn't one moment. It was all the moments. I think I started falling for you when you told me grief wasn't linear, Sophie said quietly. When you didn't try to fix me or rush me or tell me everything would be okay, you just let me be broken and sat with me in it. So where does that leave us? Sophie closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, there was a resolve there that hadn't been before. David's birthday is in 4 days. Let me get through that. Let me honor him the way I need to. And then... She paused, nervous and brave all at once. And then maybe we can talk about what this is, what we could be. Okay, Marcus said. 4 days. 4 days, Sophie confirmed. They stood close enough that Marcus could see the flecks of gold in her green eyes, could count her freckles if he wanted to. It would be so easy to close the distance between them, to kiss her the way he'd been wanting to for weeks now. But he held back, giving her the space she'd asked for. I should go, he said reluctantly. Lily sometimes wakes up and checks if I'm there. Sophie nodded, but didn't move. Marcus? Yeah? Thank you for being patient with me, for understanding. Always. The 4 days until David's birthday felt both endless and too short. Sophie came by for morning coffee, but there was a new awareness between them now. Things acknowledged, but not yet acted upon. Marcus caught himself watching her more openly, no longer trying to hide his feelings. And Sophie watched him back, her gaze warm and complicated. Lily, perceptive as always, noticed the change. Are you and Mrs. Bennet going to get married? She asked one morning over cereal. Marcus nearly choked on his coffee. What makes you ask that? You look at her the way Prince Charming looks at Cinderella in my book. That's very observant of you, but maybe a little ahead of things. But you like her, right? Like her? I do, Marcus admitted. Is that okay with you? Lily considered this seriously. Will she be my new mom? No one will ever replace your mom, Lil. Emma will always be your mom. But if someday Mrs. Bennet and I decide to be together, she would be someone else in your life who cares about you. Someone additional, not someone instead. Like a bonus person? Marcus smiled. Exactly like a bonus person. Then it's okay, Lily decided. I like her, and I think Mommy would like her too. November 15th dawned cold and clear. Marcus woke before his alarm, nervous energy making sleep impossible. He'd asked Sophie the day before what she wanted to do, and her answer had been simple. Spend the day doing things David loved. So Marcus had made plans. He texted Sophie at 6:30. Morning coffee at my place, then we'll go from there. Dress warm. Her response, I'll be there. When Sophie arrived at 7, she looked fragile but determined, wearing one of David's old sweaters over her jeans. Marcus pretended not to notice the way she clutched the sleeves, holding on to a piece of him. They had coffee in comfortable silence, Lily still sleeping, the apartment quiet around them. "Where are we going?" Sophie finally asked. "You'll see. Trust me?" "I do." After getting Lily up and ready, she was spending the day with Marcus's sister Rachel, who understood without being told that today was important. They drove to the edge of the city, to a hiking trail Marcus had researched specifically for this. David loved hiking, Sophie said as they pulled into the parking lot, surprise and gratitude mixing in her voice. "How did you know?" "You mentioned it once in passing, said he was always trying to get you to go on weekend hikes, and you preferred sleeping in." They walked the trail in the morning light, fallen leaves crunching under their feet, their breath-making clouds in the cold air. Sophie talked about David, really talked about him in a way she hadn't before. Not just about his death or her grief, but about who he'd been. His terrible sense of direction that got them lost on every hike. His insistence on making pancakes every Sunday morning, even though he could never flip them without making a mess. The way he'd leave her love notes in random places, tucked in her lunch, stuck to the bathroom mirror, folded into her books. Marcus listened, learning about this man he'd never really known, this person who'd shaped Sophie into who she was. And he felt no jealousy, no insecurity, just gratitude that David had existed, had loved Sophie well, had been part of her story. "Thank you for this," Sophie said as they reached a scenic overlook, the city spread below them. "For knowing I needed to talk about him today. For not being weird about it. He's part of your life, Sophie. Part of who you are. I don't want you to hide that from me." Sophie turned to him, the wind catching her hair, her eyes bright with emotion. "I love that about you, that you understand." They stood at the overlook for a long time, and Marcus had the sense of David being there with them somehow, not as a ghost or a presence, but as a memory honored, a love acknowledged. After the hike, Marcus drove them to a small Italian restaurant in the city. "David and I came here on our first date," Sophie said, recognizing it immediately. "It's still here. I called ahead. They're expecting us." Over pasta and wine, even though it was barely noon, Sophie told Marcus stories about that first date. How David had been so nervous he'd knocked over his water glass. How they'd stayed for hours, talking until the restaurant staff was clearly ready to close. How she'd known, even then, that he was someone special. "I don't want to forget him," Sophie said, twirling pasta on her fork. "I'm terrified that if I move forward, if I let myself be happy again, I'll forget how much I loved him." "You won't forget," Marcus said with certainty. "Love doesn't work like that. You don't have a finite amount that gets used up and transferred to someone new. You can love David and also love someone else. Your heart is big enough for both." Sophie set down her fork, her eyes filling with tears for the dozenth time that day. "How are you so wise about this?" 3 years of figuring it out the hard way. After lunch, Marcus had one more stop planned. He drove to a bookstore, one of those old, dusty places that smelled like paper and possibility. David loved bookstores, Sophie said, wonder in her voice. He could spend hours just browsing. "Pick out a book he would have loved," Marcus said. "Something you can keep, maybe read on his birthday each year." Sophie wandered the stacks, running her fingers along spines, and Marcus followed at a distance, giving her space. When she finally emerged, she was holding a collection of short stories by an author Marcus didn't recognize. "David loved short stories," she explained, "said they were perfect because you could finish one in a sitting, but they stayed with you forever." At the register, Marcus paid before Sophie could protest, and they walked back to the car with the book wrapped in brown paper, a small memorial to carry forward. The drive back was quiet, Sophie clutching the book, staring out the window. "I need to tell you something," she said as they pulled up to their building. Marcus's heart kicked. "Okay. Today was perfect. Exactly what I needed. You knew what I needed better than I did." She turned to face him, and it made me realize something. "What's that?" "That I don't want to wait anymore." Marcus cut the engine, the sudden silence loud in his ears. "Sophie, I know what I said about waiting until after today. I know all the reasons why we should be cautious and take our time and make sure we're making the right decision." Sophie unbuckled her seatbelt, turning to face him fully. "But spending today honoring David, remembering our love, talking about him with you, it didn't make me feel guilty about having feelings for you. It made me feel grateful. Grateful that I got to love him, and grateful that I get a chance to love again. Are you sure? Marcus needed her to be certain, because once we cross this line, we can't uncross it. I've never been more sure of anything. Sophie reached across the console and took his hand. I choose this, Marcus. I choose you. Not because I'm trying to replace David or fill a void or because I'm lonely. I choose you because you're kind and patient and you make me laugh. Because you let me be a mess without trying to fix me. Because you love your daughter with your whole heart, and that makes me love you more. Because when I think about my future, I want you in it. Marcus felt his own eyes burning. Sophie, I love you, she said simply. I know it's fast and complicated and messy, but it's true. I love you, Marcus Cole. He'd waited months to hear those words, and now that they were here, hanging in the space between them, Marcus found he could barely breathe. I love you too, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I have for a while now. Sophie smiled, luminous and real, and then she was leaning across the console, and Marcus was meeting her halfway, and their lips met in a kiss that tasted like salt from tears and hope for the future. It was brief, tentative, perfect. When they pulled apart, Sophie was crying again, but these were different tears. Happy tears. Was that okay? Marcus asked, suddenly uncertain. Was it too soon? Should we have waited? Sophie laughed through her tears. Stop second-guessing. It was perfect. They sat in the car for a while longer, holding hands, processing this new reality. They'd crossed the line from whatever they'd been before to something new, something real, and it was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. What do we tell Lily? Sophie asked eventually. The truth, that we care about each other, that we want to see where this goes. And your sister? Your friends? Same thing. Marcus squeezed her hand. We don't owe anyone explanations, Sophie. This is our life, our choice. What about David's parents? Marcus understood the real fear beneath that question. We'll handle that when we need to. But Sophie, you can't live your life based on what other people think you should do. If they can't understand that you deserve happiness, that's their limitation, not yours. Sophie nodded, but Marcus could see the worry still lingering. He understood it. The judgment would come from David's family, from people who thought it was too soon, from those who couldn't comprehend loving again after loss. But Marcus had learned in his own journey through grief that the only opinion that mattered was your own. And Lily's, of course. And Sophie's. Everyone else could think what they wanted. They finally made their way up to the apartment where Rachel was waiting with Lily. Marcus's sister took one look at their joined hands and smiled knowingly. About time, she murmured to Marcus as Sophie went to greet Lily. Subtle as always, Rach. Someone has to be the voice of reason in this family. Rachel hugged him quickly. I'm happy for you, Mark. You deserve this. After Rachel left, the three of them, Marcus, Sophie, and Lily, sat down for dinner. Just chicken and vegetables, nothing fancy, but it felt significant somehow. Like a new beginning. Mrs. Bennett, are you my dad's girlfriend now? Lily asked around a mouthful of broccoli. Sophie glanced at Marcus, uncertain how to answer. Marcus nodded, giving permission. Yes, Sophie said carefully. Is that okay with you? Lily thought about it seriously. Can I still call you Mrs. Bennett? You can call me whatever you're comfortable with. Okay, then it's okay. Lily returned to her dinner as if she hadn't just given her blessing to reshape their family dynamic. That night, after Lily was asleep, Marcus walked Sophie to her door. They stood in the hallway between their apartments, the space where this had all begun months ago, with a desperate knock. Thank you, Sophie said softly, for today, for everything. You don't have to keep thanking me. I know, but I want to. She stepped closer, wrapping her arms around his waist, resting her head against his chest. Marcus held her, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, feeling the steady beat of her heart against his. I'm scared, she whispered. Me too. But I'm also happy. Is that normal? To be scared and happy at the same time? I think that's exactly normal. Marcus kissed the top of her head. We'll figure it out together, okay? Whatever comes, we'll handle it. Sophie pulled back just enough to look up at him. Together. She kissed him again, longer this time, deeper, and Marcus felt the last of his reservations dissolve. This was right. Complicated and messy, and probably too soon by conventional standards, but right. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Sophie smiled. "Good night, Marcus." "Good night, Sophie." Marcus waited until she was safely inside before returning to his own apartment. He checked on Lily, fast asleep, clutching her stuffed bear, then made his way to his bedroom. On his nightstand sat a photo of Emma, taken a year before she died. She was laughing at something outside the frame, her whole face lit up with joy. Marcus picked up the photo, studying her beloved features. "I think you'd like her," he whispered to the image. "I think you'd be glad I found her." He set the photo back down carefully, then noticed something he hadn't seen before. Tucked behind the frame was an old note, Emma's handwriting unmistakable. "Don't forget to live, my love. That's all I ask." Marcus's throat tightened. He didn't remember putting this note there, wasn't sure when he'd even found it. But here it was, Emma's last request, permission from beyond the grave to move forward. Don't forget to live. He wouldn't, not anymore. As Marcus lay in bed that night, he thought about the strange path that had led him here, the tragedy of losing Emma, the struggle of single parenthood, the unexpected knock on his door from a grieving widow, the slow, careful building of trust and friendship and eventually love. Life didn't follow any script. It twisted and turned in ways you could never predict. But sometimes, if you were brave enough to stay open to possibility, those twists led somewhere beautiful. Through the thin wall, he could hear Sophie moving around her apartment, getting ready for bed. And Marcus smiled into the darkness, grateful for second chances, for morning coffee, for the courage to love again. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, questions from friends and family, judgments from people who didn't understand, the continued navigation of grief alongside new love. But tonight, Marcus let himself simply be happy. He'd earned that much. They both had. The happiness lasted exactly 3 days before reality came crashing in. Marcus was at his desk, reviewing code for a client presentation when his phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. "David's mother just called. She knows." His stomach dropped. He dialed Sophie immediately, not bothering with text. "How?" he asked when she picked up. Sophie's voice was tight with stress. "Someone from the building saw us holding hands, kissing in your car. They told David's cousin, who told his sister, who told his mother." She laughed bitterly. Small world, apparently. "What did she say?" "That I should be ashamed, that it hasn't even been 4 months, that David deserves better than to be forgotten so quickly." Sophie's voice cracked. "She called me selfish, said I was disrespecting his memory." Marcus felt anger flare hot in his chest. "That's not fair." "Isn't it? Maybe she's right. Maybe I am moving too fast, being selfish." "Stop," Marcus said firmly. "Don't let her guilt trip you into questioning what you feel. You're not doing anything wrong, Sophie." "Then why does it feel so awful?" Marcus didn't have an answer for that. He heard voices in the background on Sophie's end, muffled and tense. "Is someone there?" he asked. "My sister. She came over as soon as I called her. We're going to talk. I have to go, Marcus." "Wait, Sophie." But she'd already hung up. Marcus stared at his phone, frustration and helplessness warring in his gut. He wanted to go to her, to defend their relationship, to tell David's mother exactly what he thought of her judgment. But he also knew Sophie needed to handle this her own way, needed to stand up for herself without him charging in like some white knight. The waiting was torture. He tried to focus on work, but his mind kept wandering across the hall. What was Sophie's sister saying? Was Sophie second-guessing everything? Was she strong enough to withstand the pressure from David's family? At 3:15, Marcus met Lily's bus as usual, forcing a smile when she bounded down the steps, chattering about her day. They walked home together, Lily oblivious to the turmoil churning in Marcus's chest. "Is Mrs. Bennett coming for dinner?" Lily asked as Marcus unlocked their apartment door. "I don't know, sweetheart. She's dealing with some grown-up stuff right now." "Is she sad again?" "A little bit, yeah." Lily's face fell. "Because of us?" Marcus crouched down to her level, taking her small hands in his. "No, baby, not because of us. Sometimes people have opinions about things that aren't their business, and that can be hurtful. But it has nothing to do with you." "Can I draw her a picture? To make her feel better?" Marcus felt his throat tighten. I think she'd love that. While Lily settled at the kitchen table with crayons and paper, Marcus paced the apartment, checking his phone obsessively. Finally, at 4:30, a text came through. "Can you come over?" My sister left. Marcus was at her door in 30 seconds, knocking softly. Sophie answered, looking exhausted, her eyes red-rimmed, mascara smudged. She'd been crying for hours. "Lily's doing homework," Marcus said. "I have maybe 20 minutes before I need to check on her. Talk to me." They sat on her couch, the same couch where they'd had so many morning conversations, where Sophie had cried countless tears. But this felt different, heavier. "My sister thinks we should slow down," Sophie said, staring at her hands. "She says David's family has a point, that 4 months isn't long enough, that I'm still grieving and not thinking clearly." "Do you believe that?" "I don't know what I believe anymore." Sophie's voice was small, defeated. "His mother was so angry, Marcus. She said things." She stopped, swallowing hard. "She said I never really loved David if I could move on so quickly. That I was using his death as an excuse to run to the first man who showed me attention." Marcus felt fury rise like bile. "That's bullshit." "Is it? Because part of me wonders if she's right. What if I am just desperate for comfort? What if I'm confusing gratitude with love?" "Sophie, look at me." Marcus waited until she met his eyes. "Do you love me?" "Yes," she whispered. "But no buts." "Do you love me?" "Yes." "Then that's all that matters. Not what David's mother thinks, not what your sister thinks, not what some random neighbor thinks, just what we feel." "But they're his family, Marcus. They're grieving too, and I'm hurting them by being with you." "You're not responsible for managing their grief," Marcus said gently. "They're projecting their pain onto you because it's easier than accepting that David is gone. But that's not your burden to carry." Sophie pulled away, standing to pace the small living room. "Maybe we should take a break. Just for a little while, let things cool down." "Is that what you want?" Marcus asked, his heart sinking. "No, but maybe it's what I need." She turned to face him, tears streaming down her face. "I can't handle the guilt right now, Marcus. Every time I'm with you, every time I'm happy, I hear his mother's voice telling me I'm betraying him. I need time to work through that." Marcus stood, moving toward her but not touching, giving her space. "How much time?" "I don't know, a week, a month, until I can be with you without feeling like I'm doing something wrong." "And what about us? What about what we just started?" "I don't know," Sophie repeated, and the helplessness in her voice broke Marcus's heart. "I just know I can't do this right now. I can't be with you and deal with his family and manage my own grief all at once. It's too much." Marcus felt the words like physical blows, but he forced himself to nod. "Okay. Okay? If you need space, I'll give you space. I don't like it, and I think you're letting other people's opinions dictate your life, but I'm not going to pressure you into something you're not ready for." Sophie's face crumpled. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Marcus. You've been nothing but patient and kind and perfect, and You're human," Marcus finished. "You're dealing with an impossible situation. I get it." He moved to the door, his hand on the knob. "But Sophie, don't take too long, because eventually I'm going to need to know if we're moving forward or if I need to start letting go." He left before she could respond, closing the door softly behind him. In the hallway, he leaned against the wall, eyes closed, fighting the urge to go back in there and fight for what they had. But some battles couldn't be won with fighting. Some required patience, space, faith that the other person would find their way back. Marcus returned to his apartment to find Lily holding up a drawing, Sophie surrounded by hearts and flowers, a smile on her face. "For Mrs. Bennet," Lily said proudly, "to remind her people love her." Marcus took the drawing with shaking hands. "It's beautiful, baby. We'll give it to her later, okay?" "Is she very sad?" "Yeah, sweetheart. She's very sad right now." That night, after Lily was asleep, Marcus sat alone in his living room with the lights off, Lily's drawing on the coffee table in front of him. The silence felt oppressive, nothing like the comfortable quiet that used to fill this space before Sophie had knocked on his door all those months ago. He thought about calling Rachel, about venting his frustration and fear. But what good would that do? Rachel would tell him to give Sophie space, that she'd come around when she was ready. Or she'd tell him to move on, that Sophie was too broken, too complicated, too much work. Neither option felt right. So Marcus sat in the dark and let himself feel the weight of it all. The frustration that they'd finally admitted their feelings, only to have outside pressure tear them apart. The fear that Sophie would choose guilt over happiness, obligation over love. The anger at David's mother for weaponizing grief. At Sophie's sister for planting seeds of doubt. At the neighbor who'd felt compelled to report their relationship like it was some scandal. But mostly, he felt sad. Sad that Sophie was hurting. Sad that their beginning had been so complicated. Sad that love sometimes wasn't enough to overcome the weight of other people's expectations. The next morning, there was no knock at 7 a.m. Marcus made coffee for one, pancakes for two. He got Lily ready for school on autopilot, barely hearing her chatter about the upcoming Thanksgiving break. "Is Mrs. Bennett coming over?" Lily asked as they walked to the bus stop. "Not today, sweetheart. Tomorrow? I don't know." Lily was quiet for a moment, then, "Did you and Mrs. Bennett have a fight?" Marcus sighed. There was no hiding things from her. Not a fight exactly. She just needs some time to herself right now. Because of what those mean people said? How do you know about that? Lily gave him a look. "I heard you on the phone yesterday. The walls are thin, Dad?" Right, of course she had. "Yeah," Marcus admitted, "because of what they said. Sometimes people say hurtful things when they're sad or scared or don't understand something." "That's dumb," Lily pronounced. "Mrs. Bennett should be allowed to be happy." "I agree, but it's complicated. Grown-ups always say things are complicated when they're really just being scared." Marcus stopped walking, looking down at his daughter with amazement. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You just don't always listen." Lily's bus pulled up to the corner. She hugged Marcus quickly, then paused at the bus steps. "Don't let her be scared forever, okay, Dad? Sometimes people need someone to remind them to be brave." Then she was gone, leaving Marcus standing on the corner wondering when exactly his 8-year-old had become smarter than him. The days crawled by with excruciating slowness. Marcus would hear Sophie moving around her apartment, her door opening and closing, her footsteps in the hallway, the muffled sound of her voice on phone calls. But she didn't knock, didn't text, didn't reach out. Marcus respected her space, but it was killing him. A week after their conversation, Marcus was loading groceries into his car when he saw Sophie in the parking lot, talking to an older couple. Her posture was rigid, defensive, and even from a distance, Marcus could see the tension in her shoulders. David's parents. Marcus's first instinct was to intervene, to step between Sophie and whatever judgment they were delivering. But he forced himself to stay put, to trust that Sophie could handle herself. The conversation lasted maybe 5 minutes, but it felt like hours. When David's parents finally walked away, Sophie stood frozen in the parking lot, her arms wrapped around herself. This time, Marcus couldn't stop himself. He crossed the lot quickly, calling her name. Sophie turned, and the devastation on her face made Marcus's chest ache. "They said I'm not welcome at Christmas," she said numbly. "That until I end whatever inappropriate relationship I'm having, I'm not family anymore." Marcus reached for her, but Sophie stepped back, shaking her head. "Don't! If you touch me right now, I'll fall apart, and I can't fall apart in this parking lot." "Then come upstairs. Fall apart in your apartment, my apartment, anywhere but here." "I can't, Marcus. I can't keep running to you every time things get hard. That's the whole problem. I'm too dependent on you, too reliant on your comfort." "That's not dependence, Sophie. That's what people who care about each other do. They support each other." "But where does it end?" Sophie's voice rose, frustration bleeding through. "When do I become strong enough to stand on my own? When do I stop needing you to tell me it's okay to be happy?" "Maybe never," Marcus said. "Maybe that's what a relationship is, two people choosing to need each other." "I can't think about relationships right now. I can barely think at all." Sophie fumbled for her keys. "I need to go." "Sophie, please." "I'm sorry, Marcus. I just can't do this right now." She walked away, and Marcus let her go, standing alone in the parking lot with a car full of groceries and a heart full of helpless frustration. That night, Rachel called. Marcus let it go to voicemail twice before finally answering on the third attempt. "You sound terrible," Rachel said without preamble. "Thanks. That's exactly what I needed to hear.
What happened with Sophie? Marcus gave her the abbreviated version. The relationship, the pushback from David's family, Sophie's request for space, the encounter in the parking lot. Rachel was quiet for a moment after he finished. Then, do you love her? Yes. Like real love, not just rebound or convenience or grief bonding. Real love, Marcus said firmly. The kind that makes me want to build a future with her.
The kind that makes me think about ring shopping even though I know it's way too soon for that.
Wow. Okay, you've got it bad.
Not helping, Rach. Sorry. But Mark, if you love her that much, you can't just give up because things got hard. You have to fight for it. I'm giving her space like she asked. There's a difference between giving someone space and giving up.
Have you told her how you really feel? Not just, I love you, but the whole thing? The future you see, the life you want to build, why she's worth fighting for. Marcus thought about it. Not exactly. Then maybe you should, because right now she's drowning in other people's opinions. She needs to hear from the person who actually matters what this relationship means to you. After they hung up, Marcus sat with Rachel's words. She was right. He'd been so focused on respecting Sophie's boundaries that he hadn't fully expressed what she meant to him, what they could be together. He pulled out his phone and started typing. The message ended up being long, probably too long for a text, but Marcus poured everything into it. How he'd fallen for her gradually, in small moments. How she'd brought light back into his life when he thought he'd be living in shadow forever. How Lily loved her, how he loved her, how he could see a future where they were a family. How David's memory didn't threaten what they had, but rather made it more precious because they both understood how fragile life was. How important it was to grab happiness when you found it. He ended with, I'm not asking you to choose me over David's memory. I'm asking you to choose happiness over guilt. Choose living over existing. Choose us, because we're worth fighting for. His finger hovered over send for a full minute before he finally pressed it. The message showed as delivered, then read. But no response came. Marcus waited an hour, then 2. By the time he went to bed, still no response had appeared. Maybe he'd said too much. Maybe he'd pushed too hard. Maybe his phone buzzed at 1 in the morning, jerking him from restless sleep. Sophie, can you come over? Marcus was at her door in the time it took to pull on sweatpants and a t-shirt. Sophie answered in pajamas, her eyes puffy from crying but clear with purpose. I read your message about 50 times, she said without preamble. And? And you're right, about all of it. She stepped aside, letting him in. I've been so focused on what everyone else thinks, on doing grief the right way, that I forgot the most important thing. What's that? That David would hate this. He'd hate seeing me miserable and alone, turning down happiness because of some arbitrary timeline. Sophie moved closer, taking Marcus's hands in hers. He used to tell me I worried too much about what other people thought, that I needed to trust my own instincts more. What are your instincts telling you now? That I love you, that what we have is real and worth fighting for, that his family's grief is theirs to manage, not mine. She took a shaky breath. That I'm terrified of moving forward, but more terrified of losing you. Marcus felt hope bloom in his chest. So what are you saying? I'm saying I'm done letting guilt make my decisions. I'm done putting other people's comfort ahead of my own happiness. Sophie looked up at him, fierce and vulnerable all at once. I'm saying I choose you, Marcus. I choose us. And if David's family can't understand that, if they want to cut me out of their lives, then that's their choice. But I won't let it be mine anymore. Are you sure? Marcus needed to know she meant it, that she wouldn't wake up tomorrow filled with regret. Because this won't be easy. There will be more judgment, more people who think we're moving too fast or doing it wrong. I'm sure. Sophie squeezed his hands. I've never been more sure of anything. Well, except maybe when I married David. But that's the point, isn't it? I know what love feels like. I know what it means to choose someone. And I'm choosing you. Marcus pulled her into his arms, holding her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her. I choose you too, every day for as long as you'll have me. They stood like that for a long moment, just holding each other, feeling the weight of the decision they'd made. I called David's mother tonight, Sophie said, her voice muffled against Marcus's chest. Before I texted you. What did you say? That I love David with my whole heart and always will.
That nothing I do now changes that or diminishes what we had. She pulled back to look at Marcus. And that I deserve to be happy, and I found that happiness with you. That if she can't accept that, I understand, but I won't apologize for it. How did she respond? She hung up on me. Sophie's laugh was shaky but genuine. But I said what I needed to say. I stood up for us. For myself. Marcus cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing away the tears on her cheeks. I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of me too, Sophie whispered, terrified but proud. We can be terrified together. She smiled at that, then pulled him down into a kiss that tasted like salt and relief and new beginnings. When they broke apart, both breathless, Sophie rested her forehead against his. Stay, she said softly. Just until I fall asleep. I don't want to be alone tonight. Marcus hesitated, thinking of Lily asleep across the hall. I should check on Lily. I'll text Rachel. Ask her to come stay in your apartment tonight, just in case Lily wakes up. It's 1 a.m. She'll understand she's your sister. She wants you to be happy. Sophie was right. Rachel answered on the second ring, promised to be there in 20 minutes, and told Marcus to stop overthinking things. So Marcus stayed. He lay beside Sophie on top of the covers, both of them fully clothed, holding her as she finally relaxed into sleep. He watched the tension drain from her face, listened to her breathing even out, and felt something settle in his own chest. This woman, this brave, broken, healing woman who'd knocked on his door in a funeral dress and changed everything. He loved her, completely, messily, imperfectly, and somehow, miraculously, she loved him back. When Marcus woke, early morning light was filtering through Sophie's curtains, and he was alone in the bed. Panic flared for a moment. Had she changed her mind? Regretted asking him to stay? Then he heard sounds from the kitchen, coffee brewing, cabinet doors opening and closing. Marcus found Sophie making breakfast, still in her pajamas, her hair a mess, looking more at peace than he'd seen her in weeks. Morning, she said, smiling when she saw him. I'm making pancakes. Hope you don't mind that I raided your apartment for supplies. Rachel let me in. Lily's still sleeping. Marcus crossed the kitchen and kissed her properly. Morning breath be damned. Good morning. Rachel's nice. She told me to stop being an idiot and to keep you. She's subtle like that. Sophie laughed, returning to her pancakes. I like her. She reminds me of you, direct but kind. They ate breakfast together as the sun rose fully, painting Sophie's apartment in shades of gold. And for the first time since David's death, since that first desperate knock, since all the grief and complication and fear, Sophie looked genuinely happy. What are you thinking? Marcus asked, watching her. That this is nice, that I could get used to this. She set down her fork, suddenly serious. I know we still have a long road ahead. I'm still grieving. We'll face more judgment. It won't always be easy. Nothing worth having ever is. But I want to try, really try, not holding back, not letting fear or guilt make my choices. Sophie reached across the table for his hand. I want to build something with you, Marcus, something real and lasting. So do I. Even knowing it'll be messy? Especially knowing it'll be messy. Marcus smiled. Messy means real. Messy means we're both showing up honestly. A knock on Sophie's door interrupted them. Marcus tensed. Was it David's family? More confrontation? But when Sophie opened it, Rachel stood there holding Lily's hand. Sorry to interrupt, Rachel said with a knowing smile. But someone woke up and wanted to see her dad. And Mrs. Bennett. Lily ran into the apartment, looking between Marcus and Sophie with wide, hopeful eyes. Are you two okay now? Did you stop being scared? Sophie crouched down to Lily's level. We're working on it. Being brave is hard sometimes. But you're trying. We're trying. Good. Lily threw her arms around Sophie's neck. I missed you. I missed you too, sweetheart. Marcus watched them embrace and felt his heart swell with something he couldn't quite name. Love, yes, but also hope, also possibility, also the sense that despite everything, the loss, the grief, the judgment, the fear, they were going to be okay, different than before, changed by what they'd been through, but okay, maybe better than okay. Rachel caught his eye and smiled, giving him a thumbs up before quietly slipping out. And there, in Sophie's apartment, On a Thursday morning, with pancakes getting cold on the table and his daughter hugging the woman he loved, Marcus felt the pieces of his life clicking into place in a new configuration. Not the life he'd planned, not the one he'd imagined with Emma, but a good life, a full life, a life worth living. Sophie stood, keeping one hand on Lily's shoulder, and reached for Marcus with the other. He took it without hesitation, completing their circle of three. "So," Sophie said, looking between them both, "who wants to help me make more pancakes? These are cold." Lily's hand shot up enthusiastically. "Me! Can we make them in Mickey Mouse shapes?" "Only if your dad teaches me how. I've never mastered the technique." "Dad's the best at Mickey pancakes," Lily announced proudly. Marcus found himself laughing, the sound surprising him with its lightness. "Okay then, pancake tutorial it is." They crowded into Sophie's small kitchen, Lily chattering instructions while Marcus guided Sophie's hand with the batter ladle. Their movements were awkward at first, uncertain, three people learning to share space in a new way. But with each pancake, each shared laugh, each moment of easy connection, it got easier. And Marcus thought maybe that was how all new beginnings worked. Awkward at first, uncertain. But with patience and courage and love, they became something beautiful, something worth fighting for, something worth choosing again and again. The weeks leading up to Thanksgiving passed in a blur of small moments that stitched themselves into something larger. Sophie started spending more evenings at Marcus's apartment, helping Lily with homework while Marcus cooked dinner. They fell into an easy rhythm, the three of them, like musicians learning to play together, sometimes hitting wrong notes, but always finding their way back to harmony. The building's residents had noticed, of course. Mrs. Kim from the bus stop gave Marcus knowing looks. Mr. Patterson from downstairs made awkward comments about young love that made both Marcus and Sophie cringe. But mostly, people were kind, or at least kind enough to keep their judgments to themselves. David's family was another story. Sophie's phone would ring sometimes, her mother-in-law's name flashing on the screen, and Sophie would let it go to voicemail. She'd listen to the messages later when Marcus wasn't around, and he'd find her afterward with red eyes and tight shoulders. "She wants me to come to Thanksgiving," Sophie said one evening, sitting at Marcus's kitchen table while Lily practiced spelling words in her room. "Says the family misses me, that we need to talk about David's estate and some belongings they want." "Do you want to go?" Marcus asked carefully, setting down his coffee. "Part of me does. They were my family for 6 years. David's little nieces still send me drawings. His father calls sometimes just to hear my voice because he says I sound like David when I laugh." Sophie's voice cracked. "But his mother will be there, and she'll make it unbearable. She'll find ways to remind me that I'm betraying David by being with you." "You're not betraying anyone." "I know that in my head, but my heart hasn't fully caught up yet." Sophie reached across the table for his hand. "What are you and Lily doing for Thanksgiving?" "Rachel invited us to her place, her husband's family, the whole chaos. Lily loves it, 20 people, kids running everywhere, food for days." "That sounds nice." Marcus studied her face, reading the loneliness beneath her words. "Come with us." Sophie looked up, surprised. "What?" "Come to Rachel's with us. Meet my family, be part of our Thanksgiving. Rachel's already planning for you anyway. She texted me yesterday asking if you prefer pumpkin or apple pie." "Marcus, I can't crash your family's holiday." "You're not crashing. You're being invited. By me. And by Rachel, apparently." He squeezed her hand. "Unless you'd rather go to David's family's dinner?" Sophie was quiet for a long moment, conflict playing across her features. "I should go see his family. I should at least try to maintain that relationship." "Okay. Then go for an hour, show your face, and then come to Rachel's afterward. Best of both worlds." "You make it sound so simple." "Sometimes it is that simple. You're allowed to honor your past and embrace your present at the same time." Sophie smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "When did you become so wise?" 3 years of therapy and a lot of trial and error. The next day, Sophie called David's mother back. Marcus was at work, but she texted him afterward. Told her I'd come for an hour. She wasn't happy, but she accepted it. Then I told her I'm bringing someone to meet the family. She hung up on me again. Marcus replied, "Proud of you for trying. The invitation to Rachel's stands whenever you're ready." Thanksgiving morning arrived cold and bright. Marcus woke to find Lily already up, sitting in the living room in her pajamas, staring at the spot on the couch where Sophie usually sat during their morning coffee routine. "She's not coming over today," Marcus said gently, sitting beside his daughter. "I know. She has to see Mr. Bennett's family." Lily leaned against him. "Dad, what if they're mean to her?" "Then she'll handle it. She's stronger than you think." "But what if she needs us?" Marcus kissed the top of Lily's head. "Then she knows where we are." They spent the morning preparing the dishes they'd promised to bring to Rachel's, a green bean casserole that was Emma's recipe, and a chocolate pie that Lily had insisted on making mostly by herself. By noon, they were in the car, heading to Rachel's house in the suburbs. Rachel's home was already chaos when they arrived. Kids screaming in the backyard, adults clustered in the kitchen, arguing good-naturedly about proper stuffing technique, football on TV in the living room. Rachel swept Lily up into a hug the moment they walked in, then grabbed Marcus's arm. "Sophie texted me. She's at the Bennetts now. I told her to get out of there as soon as it gets too hard." "She'll be okay," Marcus said with more confidence than he felt. "You better hope so, because I already set a place for her at the table." Rachel lowered her voice. "Mom's asking questions, by the way, about your new friend. I told her to mind her business, but you know how she is." Marcus groaned. His mother, bless her heart, meant well, but had all the subtlety of a freight train. "Where is she?" "Kitchen. Bracing yourself?" "Always." Margaret Cole was holding court at the kitchen island, directing the cooking operations like a general commanding troops. She spotted Marcus immediately, and her face lit up. "Marcus, darling." "Rachel tells me you're bringing a guest?" Her tone was innocent, but her eyes were sharp with curiosity. "Maybe. She had a prior commitment first." "Rachel says she's very nice. A widow. Is that right?" Marcus shot his sister a look. Rachel shrugged unapologetically. "Yes, Mom. Her name is Sophie. She lost her husband earlier this year." Margaret's expression softened immediately. "Oh, that poor thing. How awful. And you two are—" "We're together, dating, whatever term you prefer." "And Lily approves?" "Lily loves her." His mother studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Well then, I look forward to meeting her. Now make yourself useful and help your uncle with the turkey. He's convinced it's not cooking right." Marcus escaped to turkey duty, grateful to have survived round one with his mother. The afternoon wore on with the comfortable chaos of family gatherings. Lily played with her cousins. Marcus caught up with his uncle about work. Rachel made him taste test every dish at least twice. At 4:30, his phone buzzed. "Sophie, getting in my car now. That was brutal. Is the invitation still open?" Marcus, "Always. I'll send you Rachel's address." He found Rachel in the kitchen. "She's coming." "Thank God. I was about to drive over there and rescue her myself." Rachel wiped her hands on her apron. "Fair warning, Mom's in full interrogation mode. I tried to run interference, but she doesn't listen to me." "I can handle Mom. It's not you I'm worried about. It's Sophie. She's fragile right now." "She's stronger than you think," Marcus repeated his words to Lily from that morning. Sophie arrived 45 minutes later, and Marcus met her at the door before anyone else could swarm her. She looked exhausted, her eyes red-rimmed, her shoulders tight with tension. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi, bad?" "Worse." Sophie stepped inside, shrugging off her coat. His mother cornered me in the kitchen and went through every photo album, every memory, every moment of David's life like she was testing me. Like if I couldn't remember every detail, it proved I didn't love him enough. Marcus felt anger flare, but he kept his voice calm. "I'm sorry." His nieces were sweet, though. They made me cards and told me they missed me. That helped. Sophie managed a weak smile. Then his mother told them not to get too attached because I might not be around much longer. "She said that in front of them?" "Yep, so I left. Told her I deserved better than being weaponized against children, and I walked out." Sophie's hands were shaking. "I probably burned that bridge forever." "Maybe that bridge needed burning," Marcus said gently. He took her hand, steadying them. "You ready to meet my family? They're loud and nosy and will probably ask inappropriate questions, but they mean well." Sophie laughed, the sound a little watery, but genuine. After the last 2 hours, loud and nosy sounds perfect. Rachel appeared from around the corner. "Sophie, thank goodness you're here. I was about to send a search party." She pulled Sophie into a hug without asking permission, and Marcus saw Sophie stiffen for just a moment before relaxing into it. Come on, let's get you some wine before the Inquisition begins. Marcus watched as Rachel ushered Sophie into the chaos of the house, introducing her to cousins and uncles and family friends. Sophie handled it with grace, smiling at the right moments, answering questions about her work and how she'd met Marcus. His mother materialized with a glass of wine and a warm smile, asking gentle questions that Sophie answered with increasing ease. Lily found Sophie within minutes, attaching herself to her side like a barnacle. "Mrs. Bennet, come see the playroom. My cousin has a dog named Biscuit, and he does tricks." Sophie let herself be pulled away, and Marcus watched them go with something warm and settled growing in his chest. "She's lovely," his mother said, appearing at his elbow. "Yeah, she is. And you love her." It wasn't a question, but Marcus answered anyway. "Yeah, I do." Margaret patted his arm. "Good. It's about time you let yourself be happy again. Emma would have wanted that." The words, so similar to what Marcus had thought and said himself, still hit hard. "Thanks, Mom." "That said," Margaret continued, her voice taking on that particular tone mothers use when dispensing uncomfortable truths, "this won't be easy. People will judge. They'll say it's too soon, that she's rebounding, that you're taking advantage. You need to be prepared for that." "I am. And more importantly, she needs to be prepared for it. That young woman has been through hell. Make sure you're not adding to her burden." Marcus met his mother's eyes. "I'm trying to help carry it, not add to it." "Then you're doing it right." Margaret squeezed his arm. "Now go rescue your girlfriend from Aunt Marie. She's probably already asking about wedding plans." Dinner was loud, crowded, and chaotic in the best possible way. Sophie ended up squeezed between Lily and Rachel, laughing at stories from Marcus's childhood that he would have preferred remain buried. His cousin's dog did indeed perform tricks, much to Lily's delight. The food was abundant and delicious, the conversation flowing easily around the table. Marcus caught Sophie's eye across the chaos and saw something he hadn't seen in months. Joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy. After dinner, when the adults were collapsed in the living room in food comas and the kids were running wild in the backyard, Sophie found Marcus on the back porch. The November air was cold but clear, stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "Thank you for this," she said, sliding her hand into his. "I needed this. Needed to remember what it feels like to be part of a family that isn't actively trying to punish me. You're always part of this family now. They've adopted you. Your mother interrogated me for 20 minutes about my intentions with you." Marcus groaned. "I'm sorry, I told her to behave." "Don't be sorry, it was sweet. She loves you and wants to make sure I'm not going to hurt you." Sophie leaned her head on his shoulder. "I told her I have no intention of hurting you, that you've saved my life in more ways than one." "You saved mine too," Marcus said quietly. "I didn't realize how much I was just existing until you came along. You reminded me what living actually feels like." They stood together in the cold, watching the kids play, listening to the sounds of family inside. Marcus felt Sophie shiver and started to suggest they go in, but she held firm. "I've been thinking," she said, "about us, about what comes next." Marcus's heart rate kicked up. "Okay, I want to do this right. I want to build something real with you, not just something born out of shared grief and convenient proximity." She pulled back to look at him. "So I think we should date, properly. Take our time, figure out who we are as a couple, not just as two people helping each other heal." "I'd like that," Marcus said, relief and happiness flooding through him. "Good, because I have conditions." "Conditions?" Sophie smiled. "I want normal. I want dinner dates where we talk about stupid things instead of grief. I want to go to movies and argue about whether the ending was good. I want to meet your friends and have you meet mine. I want to exist outside of our apartments in morning coffee rituals." "Done. What else?" "I want to take things slow with Lily. She's important to you, which makes her important to me, but I don't want to confuse her or make her think I'm trying to replace her mother." "Lily already loves you," Marcus pointed out, "and she knows no one could replace Emma. Still, let's be careful with her heart. She's already lost one mother. I don't want her to lose anyone else." Marcus cupped Sophie's face gently. You're not going anywhere. You don't know that. None of us knows what the future holds, but we can be careful. We can be thoughtful. Sophie covered his hand with hers. I'm in this for real, Marcus. Not as a distraction or a rebound or a way to avoid grief. I'm choosing this, choosing you, with clear eyes and a full heart. Did you just quote Friday Night Lights at me? Sophie laughed. Maybe. Did it work? Completely. Marcus kissed her softly, tasting wine and pumpkin pie and promise. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. Through the window, they could see Lily watching them, her small face pressed against the glass. When she saw them notice her, she gave an enthusiastic thumbs up and a grin that split her face. Sophie waved, and Lily waved back before disappearing back into the chaos of the house. She really does approve, Sophie said. I told you. I know. I just needed to see it for myself. Sophie took a deep breath, squared her shoulders. Okay, I'm ready. Ready for what? For whatever comes next. The judgment, the complications, the hard conversations, all of it. She looked at Marcus with determination. Because you're worth it. We're worth it. The weeks after Thanksgiving brought exactly what Sophie had predicted, complications and judgment in equal measure. Word spread through their circle that Marcus and Sophie were officially together, and the reactions ranged from supportive to appalled. Marcus's work friends were mostly happy for him, though a few made awkward comments about moving fast that he chose to ignore. Sophie's friends were more divided. Some thought she deserved happiness. Others whispered that 4 months wasn't long enough to grieve. The worst came from David's family. His mother sent a scathing email that Sophie read once and then deleted. His sister called crying, begging Sophie to reconsider, saying this relationship dishonored David's memory. Even some of their mutual friends from the marriage took sides, choosing David's family over Sophie's happiness. Each rejection hurt. Each judgment landed like a small cut. But Sophie handled them with increasing strength, eventually stopping trying to justify herself to people who had already made up their minds. I can't control what they think, she told Marcus one evening after a particularly brutal phone call with a friend who'd accused her of getting over David too quickly. I can only control what I know to be true, that I loved my husband, that I'm allowed to love again, and that their inability to understand that is their problem, not mine. Marcus had never been more proud of her. They settled into their new normal, actual dates that didn't revolve around grief, including a disastrous attempt at ice skating that left them both bruised and laughing. Movie nights where Lily fell asleep between them on the couch. Sunday morning pancakes that had become a tradition for all three of them. Sophie started keeping clothes at Marcus's apartment, not officially moving in but present enough that Lily stopped being surprised to see her at breakfast. Marcus learned Sophie's coffee order at every shop in the neighborhood, learned the way she liked her eggs, learned which side of the bed she preferred. They were building something. Slowly, carefully, but building nonetheless. December arrived with the first real snow, and with it, a decision that had been looming for weeks. I can't keep living in that apartment, Sophie said one evening. She and Marcus were washing dishes while Lily watched a movie in the living room. Every corner reminds me of David. His coffee mug still sits by the sink because I can't bring myself to pack it away. His side of the bed still has his pillow. It's like living in a museum to our marriage. So move, Marcus said simply. Where? I can't afford much more than what I'm paying now, and I don't want to move far from work. She stopped, seeing the look on Marcus's face. What? You could move in here. Sophie froze, dish towel in hand. Marcus. I know it's fast. I know all the reasons it's a bad idea. But we're together almost every day anyway. Lily loves you. You already keep stuff here. It would save you money, save you from living in memories you're not ready to face. It's too soon, Sophie said, but her voice lacked conviction. Says who? Who made that rule? Marcus set down the dish he was washing and turned to face her fully. We've both already lost people we love. We've both learned how short life is, how stupid it is to waste time worrying about what we're supposed to do instead of what feels right. What about Lily? What message does it send to her if I just move in? That sometimes people who love each other choose to live together, that our family is growing and changing, and that's okay. Marcus reached for Sophie's hand. But if you're not ready, that's fine too. There's no pressure. I just wanted you to know the option is there. Sophie was quiet for a long moment, and Marcus could see her working through it, weighing the practicality against the optics, the fear against the desire. "Can I think about it?" she finally asked. "Take all the time you need." 2 days later, Sophie knocked on Marcus's door at 7 a.m. like always. But when he opened it, she was holding a suitcase. "I brought more than coffee this time," she said, nervous energy radiating off her. "If the invitation still stands." Marcus felt his heart swell. "It stands. I'm keeping my apartment for another month. Just in case. Not because I don't trust us, but because I need that safety net. Is that okay?" "More than okay." Sophie stepped inside, setting down the suitcase. "I told my therapist what I was planning. She said it was either the bravest thing I could do or the most reckless. I'm choosing to believe it's brave." "It is brave." Marcus pulled her close. "We're both being brave." Lily emerged from her bedroom, took one look at the suitcase, and shrieked with joy. "Are you moving in? For real?" Sophie laughed. "For real. Is that okay with you?" "Okay? It's the best." Lily launched herself at Sophie, nearly knocking her over. "Can you help me decorate my room? And can we get a cat? Dad says we can't have a dog, but maybe a cat?" "Slow down," Marcus said, but he was grinning. "Let's get Mrs. Bennett settled before we start talking about pets." Which the transition wasn't seamless. Sophie had habits that clashed with Marcus's routines. She was a night owl. He was an early riser. She liked the apartment warmer than he did. She organized the kitchen completely differently than he was used to. But they figured it out. They compromised, adjusted, learned to share space in ways that honored both their needs. Sophie kept some of David's belongings, his favorite sweater, their wedding album, a few photos she'd framed and placed respectfully in the bedroom. Marcus never asked her to hide them or put them away. They were part of her story, and therefore part of their story too. Slowly, Sophie's apartment across the hall became a storage unit for things she wasn't ready to sort through. And then, at the end of January, she made the decision to let it go. "I'm ready," she told Marcus one morning over coffee. "Ready to fully commit to this, to us. Ready to stop keeping one foot out the door just in case." They spent a weekend sorting through her remaining belongings, deciding what to keep, what to donate, what to save for someday. David's parents came to collect some items they wanted, a tense but civil exchange where Sophie stood her ground and Marcus stood beside her. When the apartment was finally empty, Sophie stood in the middle of the bare living room, Marcus's hand in hers. "This is where I said goodbye to my old life," she said softly. "And now I'm really saying goodbye. Are you okay?" "Yeah, I am." She squeezed his hand. "Because I'm saying hello to something new." Winter gave way to spring, and with it came new challenges and new joys. Lily's 9th birthday party, where Sophie helped plan every detail. Marcus's work project that kept him up late. Sophie bringing him coffee and sitting with him while he worked. The first real fight they had, about something stupid, Marcus couldn't even remember what. And the making up after, learning that conflict didn't mean the end. Sophie started talking to a few of David's family members again. Not his mother, that bridge might be permanently burned, but his sister reached out, apologizing for her initial reaction. They had coffee, talked honestly about grief and love and the complicated ways they intersect. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. By the time summer arrived, they'd been living together for 6 months, and Marcus could barely remember what life had been like before Sophie. She was woven into every part of his routine, every corner of his home, every piece of his heart. One evening in late June, after Lily was asleep, Marcus found Sophie on the couch, looking at her phone with tears streaming down her face. "What's wrong?" he asked, immediately concerned. Sophie looked up, and he realized she was smiling through the tears. "Nothing's wrong. I just found this." She turned her phone to show him. "I've been going through old texts, and I found one from David. He sent it the day before he died." Marcus sat beside her, reading the message on the screen. "Don't forget to be happy, Soph. That's all I want for you. Happiness." "It's like he knew," Sophie whispered, "like he was giving me permission." Marcus pulled her close, and they sat together while Sophie cried happy, sad tears, grieving and grateful all at once. "I think I'm ready," she said after a while. "Ready for what?" Sophie pulled back, wiping her eyes. "To talk about the future. Real future. Not just day-to-day, but long-term plans." Marcus's heart kicked. "Okay." "I want to marry you," Sophie said plainly.
Not tomorrow, not next month, but someday. I want that future with you and Lily. I want to build a life that honors where we've been while embracing where we're going. Marcus felt like his chest might explode. I want that too. Good, because I was worried I was moving too fast again. No such thing, Marcus said, echoing his words from months ago. Not when it's right.
They didn't get engaged that night. There was no ring, no formal proposal, but they made a promise to each other to keep choosing this, keep building this, keep being brave together. 2 months later, on a Saturday morning in August, Marcus woke to find Sophie already up, standing in the kitchen with Lily, the two of them attempting to make Mickey Mouse pancakes and failing spectacularly. "We wanted to surprise you with breakfast," Lily announced, "but we're not as good at pancakes as you are."
"They're kind of blob-shaped," Sophie admitted, "but they taste fine." Marcus laughed, joining them in the kitchen. "Here, let me help." They made pancakes together. The three of them crowded around the stove, laughing when one turned out looking like an alien instead of a mouse. When they finally sat down to eat, Lily chattering about her plans for the day, Marcus felt a profound sense of contentment. This was his life now. Messy and imperfect and nothing like he'd planned. But it was full of love and laughter and second chances. Sophie caught his eye across the table and smiled, and Marcus smiled back, remembering that first morning when she'd knocked on his door in a funeral dress, broken and desperate and alone. Look at them now. Look at what they'd built from that grief and pain. Something beautiful. Something whole. Later that afternoon, Marcus took Lily to the park while Sophie ran errands. They were on the swings, Lily pumping her legs to go higher, when she looked over at her father with that serious expression she got sometimes. "Dad, are you going to marry Mrs. Bennet?" Marcus had been expecting this question for months. "Would that be okay with you if I did?" "Yeah, I think it would be good. Then she'd officially be part of our family." "She already is part of our family, Lil. A ring doesn't change that. But it makes it permanent, right? So she can't leave." Marcus stopped his swing, understanding the real fear beneath the question. Lily had lost her mother. The thought of losing another important person terrified her. "Come here," he said, and Lily climbed off her swing and into his lap. "Listen to me. Sophie loves you. She loves us. And whether or not we get married, that doesn't change. Love isn't about a ring or a wedding or a piece of paper. It's about showing up every day and choosing each other. But you'll marry her eventually, right? Probably, when the time is right." "Good." Lily settled against his chest. "I think Mommy would like her." "Yeah, baby. I think she would too." That evening, after Lily was asleep, Marcus and Sophie sat on the couch together, her feet in his lap, comfortable silence wrapped around them. "I've been thinking," Marcus said. "Dangerous," Sophie teased. "About us, about timing, about all the reasons people say we should wait." Sophie's expression turned wary. "Okay. And I've decided I don't care about any of them." Marcus shifted so he could look at her properly. "I don't have a ring. I didn't plan this. But Sophie, I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to waste time worrying about what's appropriate or what people will think." Sophie's eyes widened. "Marcus, marry me. Not next month or even next year. But someday, when we're both ready, let's make this official. Let's build a life together that honors our pasts while embracing our future. Let's show Lily that love doesn't end with loss, that families can grow and change and become something new." Sophie was crying now, smiling through the tears. "Are you proposing to me without a ring on a random Tuesday?" "I guess I am. Is that okay?" "It's perfect." Sophie launched herself at him, kissing him with enough force to nearly knock them both off the couch. "Yes, absolutely yes." They held each other on the couch, laughing and crying and making plans for a future that once seemed impossible. And through the wall, in her bedroom, Lily pressed her ear to the door and smiled, knowing that everything was going to be okay. More than okay. Everything was going to be beautiful. The months that followed were full of small moments that built towards something larger. Sophie and Marcus picked out a ring together, something simple and perfect that she cried over when he officially proposed on the anniversary of their first morning coffee together. They started planning a small wedding, nothing elaborate, just family and close friends who'd supported them through everything.
David's sister called to congratulate them, saying David would have wanted Sophie to be happy. His mother never reached out, and Sophie made peace with that loss, understanding that some people couldn't move past their grief long enough to celebrate others' joy. Emma's parents, who Marcus had stayed close with, welcomed Sophie with open arms, seeing in her the same kindness and strength their daughter had possessed. They told Marcus that love didn't diminish love, that his happiness honored Emma's memory more than endless grief ever could. As summer turned to fall, as Lily started 4th grade, and Sophie got a promotion at work, and Marcus's company landed a major client, they built a life that was rich and full, and theirs. On a Saturday morning in early October, exactly 1 year after Sophie had first told Marcus she loved him, they gathered in Marcus's apartment, their apartment now, for their usual weekend pancake breakfast. Lily was setting the table, chattering about the book she was reading. Sophie was pouring coffee, humming to herself. Marcus was at the stove, flipping Mickey Mouse pancakes with practiced ease. Through the window, morning light streamed in, painting everything golden. Outside, the city was waking up, full of other families having their own mornings, their own rituals, their own complicated, beautiful lives. And in this small apartment that had once been Marcus's refuge from grief, 3 people who'd found each other in the aftermath of loss sat down to breakfast together. They laughed over Lily's terrible joke about pancakes. They made plans for the day, errands and homework, and maybe a movie later. They existed in the ordinariness of a Saturday morning, which was its own kind of miracle. Because ordinary had once seemed impossible. Normal had felt like a distant dream. But here they were, living and loving and building something that honored the past while reaching toward the future. Sophie caught Marcus's eye across the table and mouthed, "I love you." Marcus mouthed it back, then added, "always." And Lily, perceptive as ever, rolled her eyes in that way 9-year-olds do when faced with parental affection. "You guys are so mushy," she complained. "Get used to it," Sophie said, reaching over to ruffle Lily's hair. "We're going to be mushy forever and ever," Marcus agreed. Lily groaned dramatically, but she was smiling, and in that smile Marcus saw acceptance and love, and the knowledge that their little family, however unconventional its formation, was exactly right. Later, when the dishes were done and Lily was occupied with her book, Marcus found Sophie standing at the window, looking out at the building across the street where life continued in all its messy glory. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "About that first morning," Sophie said softly. "When I knocked on your door in my funeral dress, barely holding it together, I never imagined it would lead here. To this? To happiness, to love, to a second chance at building a life." She turned in his arms, looking up at him. "I never thought I'd feel whole again after David died. But you showed me that whole doesn't mean the same as before. It just means complete in a different way." Marcus kissed her forehead. "You showed me the same thing." They stood together in the late morning light, 2 people who'd been broken by loss and had found healing in each other. Not perfect healing, there would always be scars. Always be moments when grief returned to visit, but healing nonetheless. The kind that allowed for new joy alongside old sorrow. "I'm glad you knocked on my door," Marcus said. "I'm glad you opened it." "Always will." And it was true. Whatever came next, marriage, more challenges, the inevitable complications of blending grief and love, Marcus would keep opening the door, keep choosing this, keep being brave enough to love again. Because that first knock at 7 a.m., that desperate plea from a woman in a funeral dress, had changed everything. It had reminded him that life continued after loss, that hearts could heal even when you thought they were permanently broken, that love could bloom in the most unexpected places. Sometimes it knocked at your door wrapped in grief and trembling hands. Sometimes a single father opened that door and found not just someone to help, but someone to love. Sometimes 2 broken people built something whole together. And sometimes, in a small apartment in the city, over morning coffee and Mickey Mouse pancakes, a new family was born from the ashes of old sorrows. It wasn't the story Marcus had planned. It wasn't the life either he or Sophie had imagined, but it was theirs, built on honesty and patience and the courage to keep choosing love even when it seemed impossible, and that made it perfect. As Marcus held Sophie in their apartment, with Lily reading peacefully in the next room and a future stretching out before them full of promise and possibility, he sent a silent thank you to Emma for loving him, for teaching him about joy, for somehow giving him permission to find it again. And he hoped that somewhere David was at peace too, knowing that the woman he'd loved was happy and loved and building a beautiful life. Because that's what those who truly love us want, for us to keep living, keep loving, keep finding reasons to smile even through the tears. The clock on the wall ticked forward. 11 a.m. on a Saturday. An ordinary moment in an ordinary day. But to Marcus, it felt extraordinary. Because he was here, Sophie was here, Lily was here. They were whole and they were home and they were happy. And sometimes that's more than enough. Sometimes it's everything.